Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 2 of What If I Was Reincarnated in the World of One Piece with zero knowledge of the series. Let the tale begin. Chapter 22. Compass, map, ruler, food supplies, gas. What else are we missing? Rowan asked as he scratched his head. I think this should be all right, Rowan. Our destination is not that far away, just a straight course to Baratai, Karina said. I doubt it. I mean, isn't Baratai a moving restaurant? How are we going to locate it? Look, it's not even shown on the map. Rowan sighed at Karina's optimism. Why don't we just go to a town instead? Won't it be easier that way? Nope. If you want a capable chef to join our crew, Baratai is the way. They are quite famous for their top-notch culinary art and battle prowess, which make them ideal for our requirements. Karina explained as she took the map from Rowan's hand. And in terms of locating it, you don't have to worry too much. They coated the exterior with white color, so it is quite easy to spot them from a distance due to the reflection of light. Although Rowan was skeptical, he had no choice but to listen to Karina. Unlike him, she has roamed around the East Blue since young and acquired much information that he doesn't have. Additionally, she is their navigator of his ship. If she says so, it's probably true. For the past 6 months, Rowan and Karina have been adjusting and modifying their plan. In order to enter the Grand Line, they required at least 3 more crew members, a chef, to provide them a balanced diet on the sea, a doctor, to treat any injuries, diseases, or any other health abnormalities on the ship, and a shipwright, to ensure that the ship won't collapse during their sail. Karina shared the information regarding Baratai to Rowan, the floating restaurant, full of capable chefs. They were hoping to recruit a formidable chef there, as well as enjoy the delicious meals that Baratai is famous for. All right, set sail, Rowan called out, as he himself pulled on the rope. Although he was the captain, he had more strength than Karina. It was more suitable this way. As Prominence left the shore, Rowan's eyes widened in realization. Wait, Karina, how much belly do we have? Hearing Rowan's inquiry, Karina quickly took out a stack of belly from her pocket before counting. Around 50,000? Karina said dejectedly. My dream of having luxurious life. What a pity. Didn't you say that Barity's meals are quite expensive? As Rowan mentioned, Karina slouched even more. Yep. From what I recall, a full-course meal costs over 10,000 belly at least. No. Unless we get to convince a chef to join our crew right away, we will be broke in just a day there. This is conflicting. Whatever. Rowan scratched his head before giving Karina a thumbs up. Well, if it turns out that we don't have enough, you just gotta steal for us. Problem solved. Rowan, you are a genius. Karina returned thumbs up to Rowan with a huge nod. I hope that we encounter lots of riches, Shishishi. After 3 days of sailing, they still didn't sight Baratai or any other floating building. All they had was a boring and uneventful sailing. Didn't you say that locating Baratai is easy? Rowan deadpanned. Yeah. Karina held out her tongue while lightly knocking her head. Sighing, Rowan looked around, trying to see where they were. Is that a land that I'm seeing right now? Rowan squinted his eyes as he sighted an island. Karina opened a map and looked intently. Judging by my skill, the land in front of us should be Syrup Village. Syrup Village? Rowan tilted his head. So I'm assuming that they sell syrups? As the Rowan pirates approached closer to the island, a booming voice was heard suddenly. Mwahaha, I bid you my welcome to the base, owned by me, the man of 30 million belly, Grimheart Rowan. The voice stated in a menacing manner. I currently have 100 billion henchmen situated here, waiting for my orders to strike. If you fear for your life, retreat immediately. At the same time, the pirate flags arose all around them, all revealing Rowan's old Jolly Roger of bald skull with halo. Rowan and Karina sweat-dropped at this. Don't tell me that you were the fake one all along. Karina faked a surprise as she exaggeratedly covered her mouth and pointed her finger at Rowan. Yes. Rowan simply rolled his eyes. I will give you 3 seconds. The voice continued on. 1, 2, 2.5. 2.5 and a half's half. Why aren't you running away? The voice cried as prominence continued to approach the island.
Fine.
Take the assault of my henchmen. Attack! The voice screamed, and at the next moment, Rowan and Karina saw the rocks flying towards them. Not even bothering, Rowan simply punched each stone back to where it came from. Ow! Ouchie! Oof! The stones crashed into someone, and childlike screams were heard. Mission failed. Mission failed. Retreat immediately. The voice screamed as the kids hurriedly ran away from the view. So, Captain, what shall we do now? Karina asked casually as prominence safely landed on a shore. We still have enough food supplies left. This village seems relatively safe in comparison to other islands. Rowan shrugged. We didn't encounter any marine on our entry into this island, which means that the village must be secluded. Wait. Doesn't this mean that this island will be perfect for identity washing? Literally what I was looking for a year ago. Rowan realized the irony. He found his dreamland only after giving up on it. Well, why don't we check out? Who knows, we might find some very rich and kind person who might be willing to donate us. Rowan smirked, which earned heartfelt nods from Karina. They anchored prominence on the shore before landing on the sand. Halt there. Do not approach any further, intruders. The same voice that they heard just moments ago returned. Looking up, Rowan found the boy with messy curly hair and a ridiculously long nose, aiming his slingshot towards them. A slingshot? That seems impractical. Why slingshot when there literally exists a gun? Rowan tilted his head in confusion, but decided to keep his guard up just in case. Right, this is One Piece world. Anything is possible. Are we going to be seeing some robot transformations like Gundam 2? Heh, so you are Grimheart Rowan? Rowan said to the boy. Wow, haha. I am so scared. 30 million belly pirate, pointing his slingshot at me. Karina was rolling on the ground, laughing so hard that she could barely breathe. That's right, you better be. I, the great USO-Rowan, will end your life if you don't obey me. All right, do you know who I am? Rowan grinned, as he thought of the most ridiculous name he could think of. My name is Monkey D. Dragon. Mwahaha, I have the power of monkey on my right and dragon on my left. Grimheart Rowan? He's nothing but a little wee-wee, playing in a bathtub.
Ah, Monkey D. Dragon.
That's a good one, all right? Karina's laugh intensified even further as tears sipped out of her eyes. Just imagine the worst criminal, Dragon's full name being Monkey D. Dragon. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. What kind of name is that? Usopp laughed, before shaking his head. I will say one more time. Leave now dash before Usopp could continue. Rowan simply threw a simple punch out of irritation, backed by his bounce force, to the cliff on the right. Boom, his fist left a huge dent, and Usopp's jaw opened wide. Out of fear, his brain processed the situation at an insane speed. The unnatural force with blunt sound, a well-known characteristic of the owner of Bounce Fruit, Grimheart Rowan. As Usopp came to a realization, he immediately ran away while screaming in fear. Well, that was easy. Chapter 23. As Rowan and Karina followed the trail Usopp left while running away, they soon came in sight of a small village. So this is Syrup Village? Rowan said while looking around. Reminds me of the Cocoyasi. Just like his hometown, the Syrup Village had a peaceful atmosphere. The village was relatively quiet. The scenery was beautiful, surrounded by grass, trees, and blue sky above, with the wind gently blowing. The birds were singing, the flowers were blooming, and the kids were running around. Everyone, run! Pirates are here. In the middle of the village, they saw Usopp desperately crying out. He was shouting with 3 kids behind him. Yeah, they are here. We have to run away. Interestingly, no one seemed to be paying any attention to them. Some were shaking their heads in irritation, while some frowned in disapproval. This liar is at his work again. One villager said with a clear displease. Haven't you had enough? Grow up, kid. No, it's true this time. Please, you have to believe me. Usopp tried his best to persuade, but villagers heeded no attention to him. While looking around in attempt to convince the villagers, Usopp sighted Rowan and Karina. Ah, it's them. Everyone, run away. Usopp screamed. Curious, people looked to where Usopp was pointing at. They saw Rowan, a black-haired youth with nothing striking out in particular, and Karina, a pretty girl with a light purple hair. Nothing about them seemed to resemble pirates. Looking at each other for a second, the duo smirked. Oh, I guess we are pirates now. Rowan shrugged. So what do pirates do again? Karina held her finger up on her chin, as if she's trying to think hard. I heard that pirates aim to find One Piece and become a pirate king like Gold Roger. Is that the case? If so, I am gonna be the very best that no one ever was. Rowan pumped his fist up. Curiously gazing the duo's interactions, the villagers turned back to Usopp. What's part of them is pirate? Stop framing the innocents, you liar. They are just the outsiders visiting the village. Hey, stop acting. Usopp shouted as he stomped the ground with his foot in frustration. Usopp wished to tell the villagers that the person in front of them was the East Blue's worst pirate with 30 million belly. However, he knew that revealing that information will induce panic within the villagers and worsen the situation. Don't worry, we are helping you here. By actually becoming the pirates, you are no longer a liar. Rowan grinned with flashing teeth while giving a thumbs up to Usopp. Seeing Usopp's reactions, Rowan couldn't help but troll him. Eventually, the situation toned down. Usopp seemed to have realized that the duo weren't trying to harm anybody, and the villagers dispersed to continue their daily affairs. Afterwards, Rowan and Karina found a small restaurant within the village, and seeing the cheap price, decided to give it a try. So why are you guys here? Karina asked to 3 kids, peeking from the adjacent table. Boss told us to watch you guys, and tell him if you do anything suspicious, one kid said, before quickly covering his mouth. Oh. Laughing at their antics, Rowan asked, where is your boss? He went to Lady Kaya again, probably. Another kid answered half-heartedly. Oh, he's trying to woo a girl? Ha ha ha. Rowan burst out of laughter all of a sudden, remembering Sir Martinos from Orem. Karina also remembered the stuttering man in golden suit and grew a tick on her forehead. Lady Kaya is the richest person in the town. She has personal maids and butlers for herself, and she lives in the giant mansion. Third kid shouted in awe while holding his hands out wide, trying to emphasize the size of the mansion. And she is really pretty too. Ooh, rich you say? Karina stood up all of a sudden, her eyes blazing with fire. Big mansion, luxurious life. I must see it for myself. Lead me there. She grabbed the kid who mentioned the mansion, before running out. Wait, Karina, you didn't pay. Rowan shouted while sweating hard, his hand outstretched. However, she didn't hear his words, and quickly disappeared from his sight. Ah! Rowan turned to the rest of the kids, staring at him in curiosity. Hey, how much you got? Wow, this place is quite big indeed. Karina remarked in awe as she faced the full glory of the mansion. This building clearly stood out from the rest of the village, where all construction seemed average, with nothing special. They probably built this themselves. Just how much did they spend for this? Hiring workers ranging from common workers to skilled professionals, preparing necessary materials, it should cost over 20 million bellies at least. I don't even get what you were talking about, the kid next to her said while picking his nose. Aren't you here to see Boss and Lady Kaya? Nope, not really. Karina muttered without any interest, while looking around the mansion with sparkling eyes. Suddenly, the main gate of the mansion opened slightly, and a butler with black suit, who has sharp features that is slightly toned down by his round glasses, walked out. I am sorry, but please leave without any further disturbance, the man said while pushing up his glasses. You are making a commotion here. Very, very disturbing for our Lady Kaya. Karina and the kid were confused. All they did was chat at the outside of the mansion. What part of it was so disturbing? Didn't you say that your boss was here? How come? Oh dash, Karina realized as she saw the kid anxiously placing his index finger on his lips, trying to stop her from talking. Boss? Usopp? That filthy son of a pirate is here again? The butler frowned. before going back in and shutting off the door. Subsequently, Rowan and 2 crying kids arrived. "Oh wow, this is pretty big, all right," Rowan said as he looked at the mansion, completely ignoring the sullen kids on the side. "Used to be my dream goal. Become filthy rich in peaceful place, and enjoy the privileges every day without having to work. The only thing missing here is having a waifu." "Waifu? What's that?" the kids said in confusion. "Something that every man of culture desires," Rowan replied seriously, before loosening his expression. "Well, it's not like it's possible anymore. I literally got 30 million on my head dash. Oops. 30 million? The kids cried in shock, before running away in fear. Rowan simply watched a bit, before shrugging. This island was free of Marines anyway. There wasn't much risk of having them know. Even if the Marines somehow hear the news and arrive, they will be long gone. "You scared them away. Cool," Karina stated. "Anyway, do you think I will be able to buy this mansion if I turn you into the Marines?" While they were making random conversations, they heard the shout, "Don't come back ever again." Usopp leapt out of the wall of the mansion. By pulling out a cable gadget from his pocket, he hooked the cable onto a tree branch and landed safely in front of Rowan and Karina. Usopp stood up and looked back at the mansion, while clenching his fist. "Damn that Clahador." He turned around and saw the duo standing. Why are you guy here?" Usopp still seemed scared of them, after figuring out Rowan's identity. "Nothing much. Just came here to see the mansion. There's nothing else to do in this village," Rowan said with his hands in the pockets. At the same time, he began to think of a possible scenario. If we were to assume that Marines will arrive here, by somehow finding out our whereabouts, we need to have some safety measures just in case. Finishing his thought, Rowan spoke out. "Hey, just wondering, do you have any idea as to which direction we should go to reach the Organ Island? We lost compass and map on our way, so we kind of got no sense of direction here." "Organ Island? Wasn't that someone east from here?" Usopp rubbed his head.
No idea.
"But I can try to help you." Usopp really wanted these pirates gone from his village, and was willing to do anything that didn't threaten his life. They were far too dangerous. "All right, just asking." Rowan shrugged. Karina, on the other hand, gave Rowan the "I know what you just did" look. Although Syrup Village was the ideal village to live a peaceful life, however, there wasn't any value for the ones like Rowan and Karina to exploit. Contrary to their previous jokes, they were not some petty thieves or pirates that blatantly steal from the others. Therefore, they were thinking of leaving immediately, since they knew that the Marines were so bent on catching them. It would be so tiring once the Marines start tailing them. "I guess we will head to that direction," Rowan pointed towards the direction opposite from their course, "and see how it goes. This is a goodbye, Longnose. Who knows? We may see each other again in the future, with you being hailed as the Sniper King with those slingshots." Chapter 24. After a very short-lived visit to Syrup Village, which was uneventful, Prominence has set sail again. Its course has been slightly adjusted to safely arrive at Baratai. Karina was very confident after missing it once. After sailing for a day, they sighted a red buoy floating on water. Approaching it, they saw that it had a word Baratai written on it, and was tied to a rope that extended very far. Right. Baratai tends to move around within its boundary. Therefore, the restaurant places the buoys all around itself to ensure that sailors manage to find them. "Few we managed to find it," Karina explained while pointing at the rope. "All we got to do is to follow this rope all the way." Nodding, Rowan turned the knob to face the direction of the rope. The ship changed the direction and continued its sail. Eventually, they noticed the floating building ship hybrid. The 3-story building was mainly composed of green and red-colored outer walls, with some white colors in between, which shined brightly as the light was reflected. There were many ships parked around, which indicated the popularity of this restaurant. "Amazing. First time I've seen a ship like this." Rowan was impressed by its magnificence. "How do you make a building float even?" "Well, we are finally here, Baratai, the one and only sea restaurant of the East Blue," Karina exclaimed excitedly. Although she knew pretty well about this restaurant due to the information she collected in the past, she never got to visit herself due to its expensive costs. Finding a space around Baratai to park, they used the anchor to hook prominence around the metal pole of Baratai tightly before getting off from the ship. You said that we have 50,000 belly, right? Rowan asked, in which Karina nodded as a reply. Ugh, I hope this goes well. They entered the restaurant through the door. As they stepped in, they immediately noticed how crowded the place was. Most of the tables were occupied, and the noises of the utensils clattering with the plates and people chattering filled the space. There was a waiter with black suit, situated right at the counter on the side. He noticed Rowan and Karina and quickly responded. Hello, welcome to Baratai. Please sit on the table over here. We will bring menu boards swiftly. The waiter pointed his hands to the nearby table, guiding the duo to the spot. Immediately after, he placed 2 menu boards in front of them. Full-course meal, 13,000 belly for each person. Is this the reality? Rowan muttered as he stared at the board. Baratai special salmon steak, 10,000 belly. Deep-fried red lobster with garlic, 9,500 belly. Rowan felt conflicted. Should he just YOLO and try the signature dishes, or embrace the harsh reality and order cheap ones? He took a long time to think about it, before deciding to choose the cheapest food, which is the breadsticks dipped in butter, costing 800 belly. I would like to order bread dash. I would like a full-course meal for myself, Karina said joyously, earning a jaw drop from Rowan. And margarita for a drink, please. Got it, the waiter said as he wrote the orders down. As for the gentleman, what would you like? I would like to order a full-course meal, and that's it. Rowan could not bring himself to order a beverage, which cost around 1,000 belly by itself. Please wait diligently. Your orders will be out soon. The waiter took the menu boards back and left their table. Rowan and Karina kept themselves seated, staring at each other while sweating hard and with widened eyes, having realized what they have just done. 2 full-course meals and a margarita. That's like 27,000 bellies for just one meal, Rowan said in frustration as he grabbed his hair. I remember binge eating in Orem City, which cost me only 5,000 bellies. In the past, I thought even that was a lot. But holy, 27,000. Huh. I couldn't resist myself. Everywhere I go, I hear about how good the foods from Baratai are. What's the point of coming here if we are going to have bread sticks dipped in butter? Karina slouched on her chair. Oh ho ho, I pity your soul. The rich flavor of steak, the crunchiness of the crusts that encase the soft flesh. Ah, to think such heavenly dishes cannot be eaten, simply because one has no money. From the neighboring table, someone suddenly exclaimed. Turning around, Rowan met the person face to face, before immediately avoiding the gaze. What came in Rowan's sight for a second was one of the most horrific scenes he has ever come across. The strange person had a long, straight green hair all the way to one's waist. This person was wearing a blue dress and red high heels. However, the exposed legs were one of the most hairy ones he has ever seen. And most importantly, the face. The size was humongous. It was at least twice the size of his head. With a square jaw, there was a masculine beard on the face. Such appearance scared Rowan all the way deep in the soul. I saw a titan. Crouching down, Rowan hugged his knees, trying to erase the horrific scene from his memory. Just wondering, ma'am, are you a crossdresser? Karina asked the person with a forced smile. Excuse me? Crossdresser? Said person shouted in anger, with a tick on her forehead. I am an elite nukama, Nyaruko, who had a glory of receiving Imperio Ivankov's blessings 25 years ago. Do not compare me to a mere crossdresser, said Nyaruko himphed before turning back to Rowan. That being said, hey handsome, Nyaruko winked, who shuddered in an absolute fear. I like you, why don't we enjoy a cup of tea together? Rowan abruptly stood up with a very pale face. No, just no. Please, this can't be real. Rowan screamed so hard that the other customers looked at him and frowned. Please. I am just an average Joe. Handsome? I am the ugliest bastard in the world. Haha, there is nothing interesting about me. Rowan said as his legs shook so hard that he was about to collapse at any moment. Eventually, his legs gave in, and he fell on his knees, with a terror apparent on his face. The food is a blonde with spiral eyebrows, wearing a black suit like the waiter, approached Rowan's table with plates of food, before abruptly stopping upon the sight of Nyaruko. How can this be? He almost dropped the plate, however, managed to lay it on Rowan's table before his legs gave in, which caused him to fall on his knees as well. Is this the real life? Is this the fantasy? The blond man whispered as his hands shook violently. Kya, 2 men are proposing to me at the same time. Nyaruko squealed at the sight of 2 men on their knees, in front of her. New. They stood up with all their might at hearing this. Please. Spare me. Look, this blondie next to me is much more appealing than a bulky guy like me. I smell a lot. Rowan pleaded desperately, which caused the blond man's eyes to widen so hard that veins could be seen.
No. No.
Look at my toothpick arms and legs. I shower once every year. This man next to me is the ideal man for you. The blond man hurriedly shrieked. Meanwhile, while watching the scene, Karina was enjoying the sweet pea pesto crostini served by the blond man, which was hors d'oeuvre, or the first of the full-course meal. Chapter 25. My name is Bob. Look how my name sounds. My name is Sanji. Literally means 3. What's dumber than that? He's an amazing cook. He can cook you a delicious meal every day. This man is a beast. Think about how vigorous he will be during the night. Rowan and Sanji continuously praised one another, trying to avoid the calamity called Nyaruko. Both traits are important. To see who's better, I will need to test both, Nyaruko said with a smile while holding her hands together like a maiden in love. Cook competition to see who can satisfy me better, and Those words felt like nuclear bombs to Rowan. He grabbed Sanji's collar and shook so hard. You bastard! What have you done? While being shook, Sanji was very pale with hollow eyes, as if he died. I see a man with black clothes and a hat. He's gesturing me to come closer, he whispered, before completely fainting. Rowan has never felt more terrified in his life, not even when he was facing against Arlong. He looked at Sanji, who seemed almost unconscious. Here. He's all yours. Please, spare me. Rowan gently placed Sanji on the wooden floor near Nyaruko and slowly retreated. Forget the meal. I have to run. Lovovovovo. Mommy, Daddy, I am finally getting married at 45. Please bless me. Nyaruko said with sparkling eyes as her muscular arms grabbed onto the unconscious Sanji. While looking at the scene in horror, Rowan quickly stuffed the first course in his mouth. PSSS Karina, are you done yet? Rowan whispered while sweating with anxiety. Nope, we got 11 more to cover, Karina said while sipping margarita. Hey Sanji, what's taking you so long? The second course for table 14 was prepared ages ago. A buff chef stepped out with the white puffy chef hat on his head and white chef attires, with plates on his hands. Oh. The buff chef quickly placed the dishes on Rowan and Karina's table before disappearing at a speed of light. My husbando, Nyaruko said in a doting manner, while rubbing her face with Sanji's unconscious face. Turning away from the scene like a robot, Rowan swallowed the second course or amuse-bouche, the onion garlic soup, not even being capable of tasting the flavor properly. Wait. What is she doing? Rowan's eyes widened when he saw Nyaruko taking out a dress from Zir, gender-neutral pronoun, purse. He didn't dare to look any further and could only hope that Sanji would survive. Rest in peace, my friend. Rowan let a lone tear fall out of his left eye, which earned a weird look from Karina. Hey, now isn't this a bit too extreme? Karina said in an amused tone, but Rowan interrupted before she could finish her words. You are beautiful, Karina, Rowan said sincerely. Only after I experienced hell did I realize what kind of heaven I've been living within. Karina simply rolled her eyes at this. All right. Why don't we just continue our meal? That was a good meal, Karina said in their ship, which was still tied to Baratai. Meanwhile, Rowan was sitting down on the nearby chair, as if he had no energy left in him. I don't even remember how the food tasted, I am just glad that I'm away from that monstrosity. Rowan sighed. What a shame. That's the waste of 13,000 belly. I wish I can taste those every day. Say, Rowan, how about we try to recruit the whole Baratai into our crew? Ah yes, what a good idea. Let's go straight off to the head chef, Zeph, and tell him to join our crew, so that we can have the best meals every day. Rowan said sarcastically. Remember, our goal at the current moment isn't to live a luxurious life, but to survive. Even if the food isn't as good as this, if one knows to distribute balanced diet for our crew and can fight sufficiently, we are good to go. Although Karina pouted for this, she nodded in an agreement. Realistically speaking, I don't think any of the chefs there will join us. Most of them are old, except for that Sanji dude. No way that I would be able to recruit him after I handed him to that thing. I won't be surprised if he hates me with all of his passion now. Therefore, we have two options. We can put the thoughts regarding the recruitment of chef away for now. As long as we are in the East Blue, keeping our diet balanced is not too hard. We will recruit the other occupations first, before thinking about it again. The another option is to have one of us learn the knowledge regarding this field. Karina placed her hand on her chin hearing this. Well, if one of us will have to learn cooking, definitely not me. Last thing I ever cooked was a burnt fish around 10 years ago. Well, damn. All Rowan knew how to cook were the instant noodles and fried eggs from his past life. Guess first option is more plausible then. Also, we have to find a way to earn more money. At this rate, we aren't that far away from becoming poor, Karina mentioned with a sullen face, while flapping the thin stack of bellies in her hand. If only you ate something else like gold fruit instead of bounce fruit, we would have been rich by now. Gold fruit? Sounds like a fruit Gold Roger would have eaten. Maybe one piece is a chunk of 24-karat pure gold. Rowan shrugged in disinterest. Thinking some more, Rowan seemed to have an idea. Hey, I just realized, why don't we just go to my old fleet and demand some money from them? From what I recall, it's now led by Rolly the Death Sonata. Your two other division commanders and around 500 men quit the fleet and no further news about them are heard. Still large, but not as influential anymore. Karina said in response to Rowan's suggestion. Personally, I like it. However, it will reveal our whereabouts to the Marines. Ugh, being a pirate is hard. I can't claim bounties for capturing other criminals. I can't work in any store due to my face being well known. Do we really have to resort to pickpocketing? Well, in that regards I am an expert. Karina grinned. From a glance, I am able to tell who's rich and who's poor. We can simply steal from few big fish, and we should be good to go for a while. Enough to move around from island to island and find our potential crew mates. All right. Unless you want to have breadsticks dipped in butter for 3 meals tomorrow, let's leave as soon as the night is over. Chapter 26. Captain, are you sure about this? With the demon pirates divided into 4, as 1st Division got wiped out and 3rd and 4th Division left us, we alone would no longer be able to exert a strength as the past. The second in command of Rolly's wimpy pirates, Greg, said in a panicked tone, and I am sure that sooner or later, Grimheart will return for the vengeance. Heh, do not fear. Rolly the Death Sonata replied with a smirk, while looking at his glass of wine. Haven't you realized? Think of who wiped out all of the capable pirates out of the East Blue. With his long, shining blonde hair, Rolly seemed to be lacking any fear. With confident tone, he spoke up to his pirate crew. 6 months passed by since we betrayed that Bobo Bobby Grimheart. It wasn't like we had a choice, though, Rolly turned with a smile. We, the wimpy pirates, seek nothing but a comfortable life, where we can sing and play all day long. We thought Grimheart was one of us, until he got himself caught by those filthy Marines. How despicable! While he has disappeared for 6 months, we have continued to earn respects from the commoners. Now they don't recognize us as Grimheart's angel pirates, but Rolly's angel pirates. Plus, even if Grimheart does return, with all the formidable pirates gone from the East Blue, who will he recruit? Alone? Ha! Not even he can defeat all of us by himself. Rolly barked out a laugh as he took a sip from the glass. Worry not, my friends. Soon, we shall rid ourselves of our greatest foe, Grimheart Rowan. Rololalalalo. Rowley's crew settled on the Sohelm Island that used to be Don Krieg's base. Everyone, including the Marines, are aware. However, the trouble lies on the fact that their name became well known too quickly. Even the Marines are quite hesitant to arrest them, for the people no longer recognize them as the pirates, but as the adventurers. The higher-ups within the Marines do not mind them either, since the wimpy pirates themselves are quite inferior in terms of strength. They are happy as long as you are gone from the picture. Instead, they made an offer to the wimpy pirates, where the Marines will get rid of their bounties, and in exchange, wimpy pirates will continue their job of roaming and helping people in need. Basically, they became Marines' dogs. Karina summarized as the ship sailed in the direction of the Sohelm Island. Frankly speaking, I don't care anymore. Be good. Be nice to everyone. I don't really find the point in letting them go, just because they are doing the good deeds. Their wrongdoings on me do not change, Rowan said while lying down on the chair, staring at the sky ahead of them. You said that in order for us to reach Sohelm, we need to go through the bakery town, right? Never imagined that a name for a town can sound delicious. Karina shrugged. There are multiple routes. Honestly, there are straight course that leads us straight to that island. Issue is, we are running out of rations. Also, I thought that we'd be able to look for a chef, since Bakery Town is quite well known for being the hometown of many famous gourmets. A day passed by since they left Baratai, especially when Rowan was too terrified to face Nairuko ever again. They set their course to Sohelm Island to reach Rowley and his wimpy pirates, and Rowan knew that they were still quite formidable in terms of number, amounting up to 500. Karina has her own limits, but he realized that it was up to him, as to whether they would win or not. Truthfully speaking, I am not sure if I am able to defeat such a big number by myself at the current moment, Rowan thought as he continued to gaze at the sky. I need a technique with a wide range that is able to deal substantial damage. Kamehameha, Raisin Shuriken, Getsuga Tensho, signature moves like those. Let's see what I got. Essentially, I can generate a mechanical force on the surface of my skin, known as bounce. I cannot generate this force from anything apart from myself, unfortunately. Rowan jolted up from his spot, as if he realized something. Wait, how come my clothes, my sandals, whatever I'm wearing didn't explode or shred when I used my force on top of them? Rowan looked at the top he was wearing as he contemplated. Doesn't that mean that I am able to grant bounce characteristics to other objects too? Rowan grabbed the nearby wooden table and touched it. After some concentration, the table began to bounce on his spot as if it was on top of a bouncy ground. How come I realized this just now? Rowan facepalmed himself. In the past, he tried this on the spike knuckle he had back then, right after gaining his fruit. During then, his control was mediocre compared to now, due to the fact that he just ate the fruit. Additionally, when he applied bounce, he wasn't applying on the knuckle itself, but on his hand underneath the knuckle, which shredded apart. Which means, I've been neglecting the best use of this fruit, gun. Gun could do such a marvelous thing with this ability. Once Rowan touches the solid object, either directly or indirectly, he is able to spontaneously generate bounce from that object for approximately 10 seconds, even if that object is no longer touched from him. If he is holding a gun, he would not only be able to control the trajectory path of a bullet, but also amplify its speed and strength. Now, if only I can aim. This only issue was, Rowan could not aim gun. He has never used one in his life before. He could handle the recoil from shooting due to his formidable physical strength, but he wasn't sure if he can aim the gun properly and control the bounce precisely enough to perform an outstanding maneuver. However, Rowan now gained a new direction. He imagined himself shooting many bullets consecutively and controlling them at the same time, just like how Yondu from the Guardians of the Galaxy controlled the Yaka arrow on his head. Karina, do we have a gun on this ship? After 2 days of sailing, they finally reached the anticipated bakery town. The island that harbors the town was quite unique. It was round-shaped with a round lake in the middle, making the island look like a donut. They anchored prominence in front of the beach before landing on the sand. Have you been here before? Rowan asked, and Karina nodded in response. This one, I am quite familiar with. After all, it's pretty close to my hometown, Karina said with distant gaze, as if she's reminiscing over something. Well, that's the first time I've heard anything about her past, Rowan thought as he lifted up his eyebrow. Oh well, I hope that you give me a good tour then. I've got high expectations here, as the hometown of gourmets, Rowan said as he licked his lips and rubbed his hands together. Chapter 27. Walking from the shore, the town eventually came in sight of Rowan. Bakery Town was quite similar to Loguetown in terms of building designs and size. However, if there was one difference, Bakery Town was full of restaurants and street vendors. The mouth-watering smell of food floated everywhere, which made Rowan drool. Hello. Welcome to Bakery Town, the town of gourmets. One of the street vendor owner called out to Rowan and Karina as they looked around in curiosity. We only use the ingredients that are the best of the best. Come try some. Come try this delectable fried noodle. You won't regret it. Soon, tens and hundreds of street vendor owners began to cry out to them, causing Rowan to get a headache. What's going on? Dumbfounded by the sudden chaos, Rowan asked. Karina sighed in response, crossing her arms in discomfort. The town of gourmets. Ironically enough, over 95% of the residents in this town are cooks. Pretty weird, since most of them are competing against one another, just for the 5% that are the customers. Karina explained. And among those 5%, some emerged as gourmets after tasting so many delicious foods for years. Rowan didn't know what to say. Then how do those so-called 5% make money here? They do part-time jobs in the restaurants. Why would the restaurants hire them when they barely earn any? Rowan found himself wondering what exactly the world of One Piece was. There existed so much of weird aspects that Rowan never imagined. That's why the restaurants are going broke one by one and become street vendors. Karina pointed at one street vendor owner who was waving his hands at them. That person, I remember. Last time I visited, he had a big restaurant that sells pork cutlet. It was really good too. And look where he is now. Their culinary skills are at the level of top expert. Judging by their state right now, I have a hunch that most of them would immediately accept the offer to join our crew. However, they have no combat ability. Must think thoroughly. Rowan decided to look around more. They visited the store that sells generic goods in order to restock the foods. The last time they stocked up, they bought the cheapest and the tasteless ration bar, and the experience has been quite depressing. The price is pretty cheap too. Probably since this is the only store where all those vendors and restaurants get their ingredients from. The shop owner here must be filthy rich, Karina said while looking around the shop in envy. Finally, we are going to have something other than those cursed bars. Rowan, out of excitement, grabbed an eggplant next to him. Eggplant, I choose you. Soon, they finished shopping, which amounted up to 5,000 belly. While carrying large bags over his shoulder, Rowan noticed a crowd gathering up in the center ground. Out of curiosity, Rowan and Karina walked towards the crowd and found out that a cooking competition was going on. On the left, we have our finest chef in Bakery Town, the sushi master Mushu. On the right, we have the challenger, the fiery Carmen. The host, wearing a tuxedo, excitedly said with a mic on his hand. On the left, a bald man, only wearing a loincloth, was proudly standing in front of the table and ingredients provided for him. Similarly, there was a red, spiky-haired woman standing on the right side. The contestants will have 1 hour to cook. Afterwards, our proud gourmets here. The host pointed at the 3 judges behind, sitting on a table with serious demeanors, will decide the winners. The audience cheered at the host's explanation. Without further ado, let the competition commence. As the host made a chopping motion with his free hand, signaling the start of the competition, 2 chefs immediately started to get on to work. Sushi slash. Mushu shouted as he threw fresh fish up in the air, before weaving his cooking knife at a blinding speed. Surprisingly, the fish was perfectly peeled and cut. Ah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Carmen laughed while slicing various vegetables in an exaggerated fashion as if she was dancing. After an hour, the dishes from each contestant were all cooked and ready to be served. Mushu was the first to finish the dish, and therefore, he approached the judges and served them. I present you, the heaven-defying King Golden Emperor Amazing Tuna Roll. Mushu claimed as he revealed a slice of exquisite tuna meat, which seemed to be glowing in a golden color, covering the golden rice ball that seemed to be glowing as well. I've spent over 30 minutes in order to soften this top-grade tuna meat to an extreme degree. Subsequently, I have seasoned it with the infamous golden salt, before mildly grilling the meat at a perfect temperature for 7.98 seconds. The rice itself isn't simple either. Each grain has a tint of my special vinegar salt within. Try once, and no other dish will ever induce your hunger, ever again. Hearing the proud explanation of Mushu, the judges gulped while staring at the golden tuna roll. Not being able to hold any longer, all the judges placed the whole roll inside their mouths, without biting off. This is. One judge shouted as he chewed on the food. The exploding flavor in my mouth, the perfect balance between saltiness, sweetness, and sourness, as well as the perfectly softened tuna meat, so soft that it melts in my mouth immediately. It's swimming in my mouth. I can feel the tuna trying to escape from my mouth. Ha, as if I will let you. The other judge chewed harder on the food. Damn it, no matter how hard I try, it keeps on escaping my teeth, as if it's a liquid, an incredible softness. Oh, how juicy. Mamma mia. I see the tuna waving its fin at me. It's alive, it's alive. The judges were immediately immersed in the delicious sushi produced by Mushu, who was proudly standing in front of the judges with a smile. He turned back at Carmen, who came up with her own dish ready. Seeing the reactions from the judges, Rowan and Karina couldn't help but gulp as well. Wow, that sushi master is amazing. Rowan intently looked at the said person. Potential recruit? Imagine, sushi every day. Karina didn't seem to hear Rowan. That golden salt. It's a natural variant that was born when the gold with very high purity sank in the ocean. I recall that it's very expensive. How does that man have it? Meanwhile, Carmen placed her own dish on the table to the judges, who were still engrossed by the tuna roll.
Here, tuna roll.
Trust me, you won't even remember the letter from tuna roll after you taste my dish. Carmen took off the lid from the plate. Immediately after, the steam arose within the plate, before spreading the sweet and mouth-watering aroma all around. We the judges were bombarded with such aroma from the close proximity. They jolted up from their spot, immediately waking up from the trance. What is this smell? I must try right now. After the steam cleared, what lay inside were the sizzling meat slices, which were thick and round in terms of shape. This is no normal dish. Tell me, what secrets are you hiding? The judges got giddy as Carmen served the food to them. Ah, I name this dish flamboyant garlic roast. I've perfectly sliced the ham melon into smooth pieces without any roughness through the use of the highly heated knife, and removed the smell of the meat through the use of citric acid from the Mekong fruit. Subsequently, I've seasoned the slices with my special garlic sauce, before roasting the meat by compressing it with the heated stones from both sides for 15.3847 seconds. Not being able to wait anymore, the judges carefully sliced the piece of roasted ham before placing it inside their mouth. Immediately after they chewed once, they froze, not even blinking. Hey, isn't that a bit too much of an exaggeration? Rowan couldn't help but speak out. How can food invoke such a response from a person? At best, one will simply say, it's so good. This, inexplicable. Having woken up from their trance, the judges sat down back on their spot and wiped their sweat. Without any hesitation, they immediately raised the flags that declare Carmen as the winner. Hey, Rowan. Suddenly, Karina spoke next to him. I want that sushi master in our crew. He must be rich. She shouted as her eyes turned into belly signs. Nah. That Carmen seems to be much more formidable. Let's recruit her. Rowan said as he gulped at the roast the judges were busy consuming. The victory goes to the fiery Carmen, the host announced, and the audiences cheered in delight. After the competition was over, the crowds began to disperse, leaving Rowan, Karina, Carmen, and dejected Mushu on the spot. All right, then let's have a competition of our own, Karina said as she grinned. You try to persuade that woman, and I will do the same with the golden salt. Hey, you're on. Rowan rubbed his nose as they both began to approach the cooks. Chapter 28. Now is the time to use your smooth talking ability, Rowan. Rowan thought to himself as he walked towards Carmen. HM? Who are you? Seeing Rowan, Carmen raised her eyebrow. Are you and another fan of mine, here for a sign? Why, yes. Fiery Carmen. I've been anticipating to meet you, ever since I heard of your unparalleled culinary skills, Rowan said excitedly. Humph, of course. No one can rival me when it comes to cooking. Carmen raised her head up high in confidence, before whispering, except maybe him. Rowan nodded with his eyes closed, in an exaggerated manner. I assume that your goal is to continue challenging other well-known chefs and exert your dominance. Of course. No one but me can claim the title of the East Blue's best cook, Carmen boldly claimed, while making dramatic pose with one of her hand up in the sky with curled finger, as if trying to grip onto something. And my conquest shall continue until I am able to defeat that man. Rowan took a deep breath. This is where it starts. He calmed his mind before speaking with sad tone. Then I must say that I am disappointed. Huh? Disappointed? To me, the fiery Carmen? And who decided that? Carmen immediately retorted with a tick mark on her forehead. Fiery Carmen, you are an exceptional cook, #1 chef of the East Blue? Will you really be satisfied simply by being the best frog within a small well? Rowan said passionately, while making exaggerated poses of his own, as he spun and placed one of his hand onto his chest. Why not dream bigger? Why not aim higher? Why not look for the top, the #1 chef of the world? Hearing this, Carmen was surprised. Although she had many followers that admired her skills, this was the first time she has ever received such praises. I, fiery Carmen, know my own limit. Even though I am skilled at the arts of cooking, I hold no strength to survive against the harsh seas of the Grand Line. Carmen exclaimed, while making another exaggerated motion. Ah, if only I have a knight in a shining armor who would take me to the Sea of Wonders. Pity that such dream will never come true, and I have succumbed to such reality. Rowan clenched his fist and shook it, while showing a determined emotion. Fear not, fiery Carmen. Your dream will not trampled upon. Can't enter the Grand Line? No, you are destined to sail through the seas of the Grand Line, and stand proudly as the every single chef of the world bows down to you in awe. Rowan took a glance at Carmen, who seemed to be bewitched by his words. The East Blue cannot hold you. Are you really willing to let yourself ignore various techniques, foods, and cooks that you haven't explored yet? Are you willing to hamper your growth just because of the fear that the Grand Line imposes? Then what shall I do? Do I simply sail off of the boat by myself to the dangerous sea, without any knowledge whatsoever? What are you trying to say? Broken out of her dramatic acts, Carmen shouted angrily. And this was where Rowan would throw in the key verse. Simple. Join my crew, fiery Carmen. Witness as we defeat all foes, as we adventure and discover the vast ocean of the Grand Line. We will sail through the seas, unyielding to the chaos that may be lying in front of us. Rowan cried out with utmost passion that he could muster. I promise you that you won't regret the decision if you were to join us. This offer isn't out of pity, but out of admiration, that I want to take you within my crew, whose journeys will be engraved in the history books in the future as the greatest adventurers of the whole history. Huffing to exaggerate even more, Rowan carefully observed Carmen. Carmen was at the loss of words. One moment, this black-haired man came up to her, claiming to be her fan. However, the next moment, he said that she can go much further, and that the East Blue is too small for her. Never in her life did she think of heading off to the Grand Line. However, once Rowan spoke of what kind of fame and skills that she can attain, Carmen can't help but be tempted. Will you give me a time to decide? Carmen said weakly. Rowan nodded vigorously, with exaggerated nod. Yes, of course. After all, what kind of person would I be if I don't even respect the will of my future nakama? Rowan inwardly smirked as he said this. Thank you, fairy tale. Carmen nodded, with her eyes indicating that she was in a deep contemplation. Give me 3 days. I will definitely have an answer by then. After all, Carmen didn't know anything about Rowan. Do not worry. Take as much time as you want. I will be awaiting for your answer with eager. Until then, adios, fiery Carmen. Rowan gave her one last nod containing a resolute look before turning back with his hand up as a salute. With his hands in pocket, he walked towards where Karina has gone off in pursuit of Mushu. However, when he arrived at the site, he noticed that something was wrong. Mushu could be seen cowering at a corner, while Karina seemed to be defiantly facing off against a horde of people that seemed to be pirates, with her hands on her waist. Jaya ha ha ha, who do you think you are, to interrupt our way to fortune? A pirate who seemed to be the captain, wearing a red captain hat, and seemed to be resembling a clown with his red nose and blue hair, glared at Karina. Lay your hands off of my golden salt at this moment, and I may let you live. Imph, you are Buggy the Star Clown. You think you have a chance against my captain? You should be the one to back down. Karina growled as she crossed her arms, with one of her hand holding onto a knife. Captain, no need to exert your strength. I will teach this girl a lesson. Kabiji, Buggy's right-hand man, who had an appearance of pointy black hair covering half of his face, snarled as he stepped out with a sword in his hand, while riding a unicycle. So, what's going on? Rowan said as he arrived next to Karina. Ugh, they are known as the Buggy Pirates. Not too famous or strong, but they are known to be quite shrewd at their methods. They're trying to lay their hands on our golden salt. Karina exclaimed in anger, as her grip onto knife tightened. Watch, Captain. I will show them the lesson. Who is that guy? I think I've seen him somewhere before. Buggy squinted his eyes towards Rowan. Karina began to run towards Kabeji, who also rolled his unicycle at a fast pace. Clang! Karina's knife and Kabeji's sword met in the middle, making a creaking sound. Heh! Kabeji made an evil smile. Acrobatic special. Old man's flame. He breathed out a fire from his mouth as a surprise attack, but Karina flawlessly dodged it with her flexibility by bending her body backwards. TCH, Kabeji frowned at the failed surprise attack. Acrobatic special. Murder under a cloud of smoke. He rotated his sword at a rapid pace and caused it to scratch the ground. The large amount of dust arose, enveloping Karina and Kabeji. Not a good decision. Karina simply smirked, as she easily identified Kabeji's location through her sense of hearing. As Kabeji's sword slammed down towards her from nowhere, she easily dodged the strike with nimble movement. Immediately following, Karina jumped from her spot and made rapid slashes towards Kabeji, causing him to bleed in various spots. When the dust cleared, Kabeji was seen to be moderately injured, with one of his eyes closed due to the blood from the cut above the eye. Kabeji! Buggy shouted in disbelief as he saw Kabeji losing against who he thought of as a mere girl. It's not over yet. Acrobatic special. 100 spin tops wind attack. Kabeji took insanely abundant number of sharp spin tops out of the pockets within his black cloak before throwing them towards Karina consecutively. They flew towards her at the rapid pace. However, Karina didn't seem to be troubled. With a casual smile on her face, she dodged the dangerous spin tops with incredible nimbleness and reflex. Seeing that Karina wasn't struggling at all against Kabeji, Buggy began to sneak his hand out by using his devil fruit power. Chop fruit that allows him to split part of his body at his will. Said hand was holding onto a sharp knife, intending to stab Karina. Bang! All of a sudden, a sound of gun was heard. Ah! Buggy cried as he stared at his hand, which was bleeding due to a bullet that penetrated in the middle. Buggy shifted his gaze from Karina and saw Rowan casually pointing his revolver towards him. Try again and you're dead. With Rowan's threatening words, Buggy frowned in a pain. Just who are you? Buggy seethed while glaring at Rowan, before his eyes widened. Wait, he's Dash! Kabeji jumped up high in the air with a grimace, after he saw that his attack didn't manage to harm Karina at all. Let's see if you can dodge this too. Acrobatic special. Rising fireworks, single flower vase. Karina stared up at Kabeji while grinning, while flawlessly rotating the knife in her hand. Time to end this, once and for all. Karina held her knife in a reverse grip and crouched slightly. Blade storm. On the next moment, Karina jumped up towards Kabeji, who was descending with his sword pointing towards Karina. She dodged Kabeji's sword before slashing Kabeji countless number of times in an instant moment, turning him into a mincemeat. Bleeding severely, Kabeji crashed onto the ground, unconscious. The other crew members of Buggy Pirates saw this scene in fear. "Captain, what do we do?" However, Buggy didn't respond, but instead began to sweat while gritting his teeth. "Grimheart Rowan, the demon of the East Blue. So it was you all along," Buggy said with a tone of nervousness. "No choice. I will fight you." Buggy started to charge towards Rowan, before quickly grabbing unconscious Kabeji and running away instead. "Everyone, retreat." All of Buggy's crew began to run with a scream. Rowan simply deadpanned, while Karina grinned and began to approach Mushu, who was still shivering in the corner. "Hee hee, golden salt is all mine now." Chapter 29. "Hey Sushi Master, you want to join my captain's crew?" Before Karina could even finish her words, she was interrupted. "Oh, I'll give you all the golden salt I got. Please let me go." Mushu screamed in fear as he took the small bag of golden salt out of his sack that contains the ingredients he used for the competition. Immediately after, he ran away, leaving Rowan and Karina dumbfounded. Soon after, Karina giddily took a hold onto the bag of golden salt and shook it gently. The rustling sound, which was mixed with high-pitched sound of metals clanging, was heard, identifying that it was indeed the golden salt. "Hee hee, believe it or not, this golden salt is even more expensive than gold, since not only is gold rare, but the natural combination of gold and salt is even rarer, for gold is known to be one of the least reactive metal. Even for a bag as small as this, I am sure that we can fetch at least 1,000,000 belly." When Karina said this, Rowan's eyes widened in amazement. "A million? I've never had more than 100,000 in my life," Rowan remarked in shock, having remembered the journey he has been going through, where he was stressing over his poverty. Karina placed the bag in her cleavage. She, as a thief, knew just how vulnerable the pockets are. Rowan, seeing that, quickly turned his head to the sideways. He's never seen someone being able to store stuffs in there. "So how did your side go? I don't think we need a bald sushi chef like that," Karina said with disinterested tone. "You are only saying that because you got what you wanted." Rowan scratched his head. "Well, it was neither yes nor no. She asked me for time, which is understandable really. I am complete stranger to her, and bam! I walked up to her and was like, 'Hey, join my crew since your talent is too amazing to rot in the East Blue.'" Karina tilted her head in response. "Does that mean we are going to stay here for some time?" "Heh, obviously not," Rowan immediately replied with a smirk. "She said she will consider it, even though I am a stranger," which means she's pretty much into the idea. What's holding her back is probably the fact that she doesn't know anything about us. "Oh, so you have a plan?" "We have to push her to willingly join us by herself. Create some scene tomorrow that will accidentally reveal our identities. Then we will act all dramatic and give speech about how we have dreams that we must accomplish. Right after, we express that we wish no harm upon the innocents, and that we will leave right away to avoid any disasters from happening, to show that we are good human beings, even though we are labeled as pirates. Even if she doesn't join, we will probably leave a good impression on her. After dealing with Rolly, everyone will receive the news of our whereabouts. She will come by herself if she wishes a spot in. Well, hopefully. I can't predict a human's mind. It's entirely up to her." "Fair enough," Karina shrugged. "But if we are unable to recruit any chef here as well, you are the one cooking." "Well, unless you want me to poison you by accident." "All right, let's go back to our ship then. We got to put these bags away at least." And the next day, as the street vendors continued their desperate attempts to fish in any customer, there was a bounty poster that hasn't been posted the day ago. It featured Rowan, a black-haired man with black eyes, staring menacingly with muscular frame. The people thought as they walked by that they have seen the man in the picture somewhere. They sensed a familiarity in the photo. It was at that moment where Rowan and Karina were seen to be walking next to them. This caused them to stop abruptly. "Huh. Isn't that man? What?" The people stared in fear as the man in the poster was walking in their town. The people slowly backed off from Rowan and Karina, forming a circle around. Holding the bounty poster, one person exclaimed in shock, "Grimheart Rowan, the demon of the East Blue. 30 million belly." The conflict in people's face was obvious in their face. They have witnessed and received the good wills of the Angel Pirates ran by Rowan before. However, it was 6 months ago that Angel Pirates was no longer under Rowan's command. They didn't know how they should respond. "It's a pity." Rowan spoke with his head lowered. "I have come into this town out of goodwill, but am repelled simply due to my status as pirate." Rowan then rose up, with his eyes looking at the sky intently. "Pirate, the title that the Marines decided to use to label me, because I slew Arlong who threatened and overtook my hometown, because I stopped Don Krieg from committing mass raid. Tell me, what have I done to deserve this fear? It was all out of goodwill." He secretly eyed Karina, with her giving a small nod to him. Subsequently, Karina grabbed Rowan's shoulder while letting tears out. "Oh, my captain, how can the world be so cruel to you? Betrayed by those who claim themselves to be a justice, by those who claim to be your subordinates." Karina flicked her fake tear. "Do not worry, for I, your one and only crewmate, will never leave your side, unlike those wretched animals." Looking at such emotional outbursts from Rowan and Karina, people started to soften up. "Is that true? That's simply too much for one to handle." One person said with gritted teeth, "Where is justice in this? What are Marines doing?" "Hey, don't believe in that. He's pirate. You don't know if he's lying. Don't you remember how he used to lead the Angel Pirates and help everyone? Surely, you couldn't have forgotten that." The townspeople started to argue among themselves as to whether Rowan is credible or not. "Everyone, please calm down." Rowan's voice boomed with charismatic demeanor. "You need not to worry about me. Although I have been living through many troubles, I have come out stronger after every ordeal. The Marines, pirates, and whosoever won't be able to stop my dream." He deliberately pumped his fist up in the sky. "I'm sorry for causing all this commotion. I'll leave swiftly before the Marines find out and decide to rampage upon this town." Rowan made a courteous bow before walking away with Karina. "Hey, just wondering, who placed this poster here?" The person who was holding the bounty poster said in confusion, before ripping it off. "This honorable man does not deserve to be issued with a bounty." All of this was being watched by Carmen, whose hotel was located in the building right next to where the commotion happened. What an amazing man, believing firmly in his goal, even if faced by such obstacles. Carmen thought as she stared at the duo walking away. "Is this a sign? Has the destiny set me to join their crew and embark on the journey full of hardships and become a legend?" Carmen began to dream of the glorious future that she may achieve by following Rowan. "This may be my only chance." Hurriedly, Carmen packed her belongings and ran out of the hotel, not caring that her hair wasn't tended to form a fiery spike shape like the usual. "Grimheart Rowan," Carmen shouted as she reached Rowan and Karina, who were walking quite slow. They stopped as they heard Carmen's voice. Huff huff breathing heavily, Carmen looked up to see Rowan's eyes staring at her in shock. "Let me join your crew. Just as you harbor a big dream in the vast ocean, so do I. Who else, but I, the fiery Carmen, deserve to be the cook of the best adventurers to be known in the history." Rowan gave out a serious expression. "It won't be easy. We will have to bleed, suffer, and give our everything. Are you truly ready to accept such life?" "Yes. With you as my captain, I am not afraid of betting my life, knowing that my dream isn't a foolish one." Carmen cried out passionately, earning a nod from Rowan. "Then from here on, you are the cook of the demon pirates." Rowan grinned and held his out. Carmen grabbed the hand with her own and shook it. "I look forward to our journey together from now on." From behind, the audience were clapping, some even tearing up at such dramatic scene. Some others began to be inspired to write a good story off of it. Tale of the Saint Demon, all according to the plan. Rowan made a satisfactory smile inwardly and made a high five with Karina, unseen by everyone else. Chapter 30. "So, Captain, where are we heading off now?" Carmen, who loosened up after getting to know Rowan and Karina better, asked in curiosity. We have three goals at the current moment. First, recruit doctor and shipwright as crewmates, and if we can't both, at least a doctor. Second, earn a sufficient amount of money before heading off. How? Currently, I'm thinking of taking a visit to the Angels. And for last, of course, is to enter the Grand Line safely before the Marines start to bombard us endlessly. Rowan held his finger up as he explained. Although we have managed to earn 3 million belly by auctioning the golden salt to ingredient-hungry chefs, plus another million belly from Carmen, it's still far from enough. When we reach Loguetown, we need to purchase a log pose and various other equipments for navigation in the Grand Line. At the same time, we don't know how inflated the prices are there. We need to seize every opportunity that allows us to earn money. Karina added on from Rowan's point, and Carmen nodded in an agreement. Well, if I were to voice my opinion, the kitchen is not in the best state either. The fridge is old and not functioning efficiently. Many of the cooking tools are also poor in terms of quality. We need to renovate that section as well. Carmen voiced her opinion. Yes, definitely. We will try to do that as soon as possible. Rowan inwardly sighed. The more he sailed, the more he realized how important it is to accumulate wealth. An adventurer was such a money-consuming occupation. Well, don't worry too much about it. Who knows how much we'll be able to rip off of the Angels. Afterward, Rowan began to elaborate on the next set of plans. It would be for the best to stay away from the Marines' radar as long as possible, but our clash against the buggy pirates is bound to be spread eventually. Therefore, we will deal with Rolly as quickly as possible and temporarily hide here. Rowan pointed at the part of the map that indicated an island with a warning sign for abnormal weather. 6. With my ability to grant bounce property to our prominence, we will be able to reach the island without substantial damage. After the Marines return to their posts, we will head off straight to Loguetown. If we were to look for advanced degrees such as a doctor, it's definitely got to be a town as large as this. Besides, the Marines have not seen our new Jolly Roger or prominence. We have the most chance of safely entering the Grand Line before we lose this advantage. Listening to Rowan's plan, Karina and Carmen nodded. They didn't have much time, and once the world learns of Rowan's new pirate crew, entering the Grand Line will practically be impossible. However, Carmen seemed unsure about one point. It's just 3 of us against 1,500 of Rolly pirates. How can you be so confident to win? Carmen looked back at the sniper rifle that was sitting in the corner. With just that, Karina laughed at Carmen's remark and answered the question herself. Let's just say that our captain has recently acquired a particular skill. You will see when we get there. It seems that we are all set. Let's head off without wasting any more time. Rowan stated, with his eyes glued onto their next destination, Sohelm. His eyes were firm and determined. He knew that the next time he fights, he will be committing mass murder. Peace was never an option, was it? Rowan muttered as he and his crew stood up and began to prepare for the leave. Over 2 days, the ship sailed through the sea without much difficulty. With adequate navigation by Karina and advanced cooking from Carmen, Rowan was able to hone his abilities even further without a worry. Currently, Prominence was situated in the middle of the calm ocean, where Sohelm Island was visible at a far distance. With her hand above her eyes, Carmen squinted her eyes in an attempt to get a clear view of the island. I can barely see anything here. How are you planning to do this, Captain? Now, if there's one thing that Rowan realized since his life in this world began, it was an abnormally good sight that he seemed to be born with. Although the name Uchiha didn't really grant him an overpowered Sharingan or any other abilities like the Uchiha clan, his visual prowess was clearly above the average. One example was when he was able to sight Arlong's pirate ship from a far distance, and it was only due to his sight that he was able to warn other people before Arlong's arrival. However, how did Rowan become so skillful at handling the gun? The answer is, he wasn't. He is unable to aim accurately unless the distance is close enough, just as when he shot Buggy. All he was good at was being able to shoot in the intended direction, as his physical strength easily ignored the recoil. However, what he trained over the days was the use of micro-bounce to amplify and adjust a bullet speed, power, and trajectory path. Karina looked at the sniper rifle Rowan was holding. Sometimes, your ability just doesn't make any sense. At this distance, they shouldn't even be able to sight us without using a binocular. Taking a deep breath, Rowan crouched down and aimed the sniper rifle towards the island. All right, let's do this. There only lied silence and prominence, as all members tensed up for the battle. In the next moment, bang, a loud blast was heard as the sharp bullet flew out of the sniper rifle at a rapid speed. Boom, boom, boom. Subsequently, the bullet's speed was further amplified by the consecutive applications of the bounce force, causing it to fly at a blinding speed towards Sohelm Island. And here we go, Rowan said as the bullet pierced the chest of the first pirate it came across. Gah! The pirate fell as he was penetrated by the bullet, traveling at an incredible speed, leaving a bleeding hole in his heart. Before he could register, he was dead. Immediately after, another pirate fell, followed by another. What is this? One pirate screamed in panic as the crew members around him began to fall with a bleeding hole. He didn't have time to say any further, though, as the bullet pierced through him. Boom, 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 boom. The bullet's trajectory path unnaturally bent and pierced through numerous pirates at an insane pace, and ended the lives of 200 pirates in an instant. After 10 seconds, the bloody bullet abruptly lost its momentum in the midair and fell to the ground. The door of the ship anchored to the island opened, before Rowley and the commanders stepped out. Their eyes widened as they saw numerous numbers of their crewmates dead on the ground. How can this be? Before Rowley could finish his anguished shout, he faintly heard the booming sound from far away. This sound, the bounce fruit. Rowley turned his head towards the source of the sound. What happened at the next moment terrified Rowley. The bullet appeared out of nowhere and pierced tens of his men at once. Then, the said bullet, with a sound of small boom, was deflected to another direction, before continuing its frightening travel. The bullet's trajectory path was completely random, however. It simply flew and bounced at an insane rate, that there was nothing the crew could do but hope that they won't get pierced through it. Captain. Greg, who was standing behind Rowley, whimpered worriedly. It's him. While holding the binocular with shaky hands, he sighted Rowan with his sniper rifle aimed towards them. Biting on his lips so hard that it began to bleed, Rowley ordered his men, "Fire the cannon immediately. We cannot lose any more than we already have." Boom, another noise was heard, and Rowley saw Greg collapsing on the ground while screaming and holding his arm, which is nearly detached from his body. Ah! Greg screamed in immense pain. Watching such a scene, Rowley became increasingly pale. Boom, suddenly, the bullet that went through Greg shot through another commander, who was standing on Rowley's left. Vomiting blood, said commander fell on the ground. Rowley had no idea if he was dead or alive. Rowley gulped as his legs began to shake, and the sweat began to pour out of his body, drenching him in a second. No, this can't be real. With an uncontrollable fear that he is unable to conceal anymore, Rowley ran back into the cabin with a terrified scream, before slamming the door shut. Watching this from a far distance, Rowan finally released his sniper rifle. Holding his shaky hands down, Rowan signaled to Karina and Carmen, who nodded before adjusting the sail to change Prominence's path towards Sohelm Island. Guess you're finally living up to your title, the Demon of the East Blue. Karina weakly grinned at Rowan, who took a deep breath out. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So be it. I'm not a justice-craving Marine. A petty pirate like me forgives no betrayers, Rowan said to himself as Prominence reached the island. The island itself was devastating to look at. Over 1,000 corpses lie dead. The remaining survivors were either screaming in pain from their injuries, shaking in fear, or lying unconscious. Rowan landed on the land with a cold demeanor, as Karina and Carmen stood on his left and right. The pirates watched in fear as Rowan and his crew members slowly walked up to the ship, where he witnessed Rowley locking himself within. Tap tap as they walked up onto the ship. There was nothing but the sounds of the footsteps along with the creaking noise of the deck. Calmly standing in front of the cabin door, Rowan simply cocked his fist back before punching forward. Boom, the front of the cabin was destroyed instantly, and Rowley was revealed to be cowering in the room, crouching down on the corner. "See, Captain," Rowley stuttered pleadingly, but all he received was Rowan's impassive gaze. "Oh, so am I your captain now?" Rowan snorted, before taking out the revolver from his holster. Rolly's eyes darted all around, trying to find himself a way out. Please. I was simply too afraid of the Marines. I have never thought of betraying you, not even once. Crawling towards Rowan, Rolly banged his head on the floor. Just give me another chance. Please, I beg you. Immediately after, Rolly's cowardly visage suddenly changed to a murderous gaze, and he jumped up towards Rowan with a sword in his hand, trying to use the element of surprise to his advantage. Clang. In spite of Rolly's effort, the sword was easily blocked by Karina, who casually placed her knife in front of the sword. As expected from the captain of Wimpy Pirates, Rowan, not even bothered by Rolly's abrupt assault, pointed his revolver at Rolly's head. Live like a coward, die as a coward. Without further ado, Rowan pulled a trigger, and Rolly collapsed on a floor with a bullet piercing through his head. End of the story. Rowan whispered softly as his gun lowered. Chapter 31. Prominence was once again sailing through the sea. A day has passed since Rolly's Wimpy Pirates fell by Rowan's hands. Rowan's crew had left Sohelm Island right after gathering the fortunes that previously belonged to the Wimpy Pirates, which surprisingly amounted up to approximately 15 million belly, even with 1,500 men under their command. Now possessing a wealth that amounts to 19 million belly, Rowan's crew set off towards Synopsis, which was situated in the chaotic sea that laid in between Sohelm Island and Loguetown. Rowan, we are about to enter the rough currents, Karina reported urgently. It all depends on you. Nodding, Rowan crouched down on one knee and placed his right hand on the deck. What happened next was interesting, as the rough winds and waves that crashed against Prominence, from the sides to the sail clothes, were bounced off the ship before they could cause any damage. Prominence sailed through the malevolent storm miraculously, and soon, the ship arrived at Synopsis in the middle. The Marine branch nearby probably received the report by now. I'm not sure what course of action they will take, but we can only move forward from here on, Rowan said as the ship was anchored on the edge of Synopsis. One thing we can confirm, however, is that they won't be able to find us here. Sailing to Bakerytown or Sohelm Island will require them to go around this disastrous weather, and we will use this to our advantage to enter the Grand Line before they even realize. Karina and Carmen agreed to Rowan's words. With all that said, I just hope we leave here soon. This place seems pretty creepy, Karina remarked as she looked around the island with a frown. Right after, she suddenly tensed before taking out her knife. Do you hear it? Hear what? Carmen asked as she looked around in caution. Rustle, rustle. The sound of rustling was heard on the nearby bushes. Rowan narrowed his eyes towards the bush, ready to react just in case. Suddenly, a person with long, spike light blue hair showed up, with an eye mask on his face. He was wearing a green-colored coat with open midriff, which showed off his toned physique. The man looked bewildered as he stared at Prominence at its glory behind Rowan's crew. This how? The man asked in wonder. The ship looks completely unscathed. You were able to get through this storm? Rowan didn't relax as he asked, and you are? His hand laid on top of the revolver, attached on his waist. Seeing Rowan's reaction, the man immediately held his hands up. Please, I have not come to harm you. The man slowly spoke as he gulped. I am just a nameless guy who decided to leave his hometown for an adventure and got stranded in this island with no way out. I came here because I witnessed a large red ship entering the island and was wondering if it can help me to get out of here. The fact that you're nameless already reeks of suspiciousness, you know? Karina replied with a clear suspicion on her face. No, I am the opposite of suspiciousness. It's not that I'm nameless, but that I decided to throw away my name because I didn't want to affiliate myself with my previous family anymore. Don't kill me, the man said in a panicked voice. How about I make a name for myself? I know, since I am masked, I'll call myself Masked Dan. There, I no longer am suspicious, right? Author's interruption. This dude is not the main character. He's the masked deuce, who's supposed to be Ace's first crewmate. In case you haven't realized, Carmen isn't main character either. Karina looked at Rowan with, what do you think? Look. Rowan walked up to the man who claimed himself to be Masked Dan and took his mask off. Nope, I don't recognize him. Rowan placed the man's mask back on him. So, Dan, you said that you were on an adventure, right? Alone? Rowan asked, in which masked Dan frantically nodded. Rowan couldn't help but be suspicious of the masked man, even though he didn't seem malicious or strong at a glance. After all, he's been fooled before, by Psycho P and Mad Treasure. All right, don't mind us if we do some checkups on you. If everything is okay, we will help you out to get out of here. Hearing Rowan's words, Dan nodded with all his might. For the next hour, Rowan's crew tried everything. First, Karina and Carmen dipped Dan in the sea to check if he's devil fruit user or not. He wasn't. Second, they checked for any hidden weapons or poisons Dan may be hiding, and they found nothing. Third, Rowan sparred with him to see if Dan is hiding any formidable strength. Although Dan was quite capable, Rowan was able to defeat him easily. So why wear mask and make yourself more suspicious? Rowan asked. Although he hasn't completely let go of suspicion yet, he was pretty sure that Dan wasn't an imposter. Dan lightly scratched his head before answering, I don't want my family to find me out if I were to end up on a bounty poster. I can't even imagine how bad it has to be for you to leave your own family like that. Rowan commented, reminiscing his deceased family.
Dan Siget.
They didn't approve me for being a bottom student in the medical school, where they forcibly placed me into. I've always dreamt myself of adventuring on the sea anyway, so yeah, I just left. Hearing this, Rowan, Karina, and Carmen's eyes widened. The three of them secretly exchanged glances and gave out a small nod. A potential doctor? This was the best chance they had. Heh, we're on the same page here then, Rowan said with a smirk. Each one of us, just like you, began to sail with a dream. For instance, Rowan pointed at Carmen. Carmen over here is on her way to become the greatest chef in the whole world, while Karina over here, Rowan pointed at Karina, will become the richest person of the world. And me? Rowan pointed at himself. I, Grimheart Rowan, too have a dream, which is to become the strongest man in the world. Rowan grinned excitedly at Dan, while inwardly thinking, well, to be precise, I just want to survive, but the situation demands me to be strong. Dan's jaw dropped at Rowan's claim. Hold on, Grimheart Rowan? It's you? Rowan heeded no mind at Dan's outburst and continued. And now, you. Rowan pointed at Dan. To have the greatest adventure no one ever had. Join my crew, Dan. In whose ship will you enjoy an adventure greater than I, the demon of the East Blue? Dan's shocked expression changed into a confused one. What? You're offering me to join your crew all of a sudden, just like that? He couldn't understand. In one moment, they were suspicious of him to death, and in the next moment, they are suddenly all chummy and wants him to join their crew. Don't worry, that was just an initiation to join our crew, Karina said with a sweet smile. Every person here went through that. Yes, yes. Carmen nodded with her eyes closed, while her arms were crossed. Something smells fishy. Why do I feel like I've been tricked? Ah, whatever. The moment I laid my eyes on you, I knew you were going to be my crewmate. There was no doubt in that. Rowan held out his hand with a gentle smile. Dan was still bewildered. Should I join? I mean, if speaking about adventuring, what he said is true, I won't stand a chance in the Grand Line alone, without a strong backing like that dude over there. Dan thought as he stared at Rowan. Intently observing Dan's behavior, a corner of Rowan's mouth twitched up very slightly. Now. How sad. It seems that the idea isn't as appealing to you. Don't worry though, we will still help you to leave this island. Rowan slowly retracted his hand with a faked disappointment. Right at that moment, his hand was grabbed by a panicked Dan. Please accept me as a part of your crew, Captain. Dan latched onto Rowan's hand and shook hard. With a sheer luck alone, Rowan managed to recruit a doctor into his crew. Phew, what a relief. Now, all we have to worry about is entering Grand Line safely, Rowan thought as he patted Dan's back. Welcome to our crew, Dan. Chapter 32. During the night in Sixus, Rowan's crew could be seen sitting around the campfire in the forest. Munch Dan was busy munching down the food cooked by Carmen, since he finally got to satiate his hunger after being stranded in the island for 2 days. Meanwhile, the other crew members seemed to be in a deep thought. So you say that there's no one else but you here? Rowan asked Dan. Yes. There is no source of food either. The sea is blocked by the rough currents, and sometimes, those stormy weather would sip into the island and run a havoc. I suspect that's the only reason as to why bald cypress tree is the only kind we are able to see here. After arriving, I have been roaming around this island for the past 2 days, in search for a food or other people, but to no avail. Karina was getting all giddy herself. Imagine how many pirates ended up shipwrecked here. This means there may be some treasures left for us to take. I refuse to believe that such island that harbors lives such as bald cypress exist without the any edible kind, Carmen declared as she swiped her hand from left to right, which was holding a yellow fan whose edge was covered by a white fur. Dan shrugged in response to Carmen's outburst. Since she may be right. Rowan cracked his neck as he stood up. It seemed that they are very eager to explore the island. All right then. I will hand out this emergency firecracker to 2 of you. Since you 2 seem so eager to explore this island, I will stay here with Dan to protect the ship, and if I sight any signal, I will come immediately. Rowan brought out the red sticks from prominence and handed out to Karina and Carmen. Remember, though, that you guys only get until the morning. We will have to leave right after. Hurriedly, they snatched the sticks and anxiously ran into the dark forest. Are they not scared? Dan asked in curiosity after he saw the 2 running. Rowan shook his head in disagreement. You won't believe what we did just before arriving here. So while we wait, let me summarize what happened, so that you have an idea what to expect from now on, after we get out of this island. The sun began to rise again, although Sixus didn't receive much of its sunlight due to the stormy weather. Rowan and Dan were patiently waiting for Karina and Carmen to return. Oh, here she comes, Rowan said, as he sighted Karina running, with a sack full of something. Dan squinted his eyes in an attempt to follow Rowan's gaze, but saw nothing. Oh, something on the back? She did find something, it seems. Karina soon stepped onto prominence and slammed the sack down from her back onto the floor. Wiping the sweat on her forehead, Karina grinned as she pat the sack on the floor. Rowan, do you see this? Hee. I robbed from the dead. Inside of sack was full of gold coins, bellies, jewelry, and other accessories all mixed together. Seeing this, Rowan and Dan's jaws opened wide. Sometimes, I wonder if you are a human, Karina. Rowan shook his head. It was as if she had a sixth sense for anything related to becoming rich. Not that he minded. He was very glad to have her on his ship. With her, they will never run out of money. Suddenly, they saw part of the forest afar blasting in fire, and the fire began to spread all around the forest at a rapid pace. Huh? What's going on? Did Carmen fire a signal towards a tree? How did the forest catch on a large flame just like that? Dan shouted in shock as he witnessed this scene. Rowan too was shocked. The forest fire. This wasn't good. The smoke produced from the fire of this scale will be viewable, even if the island is unapproachable due to its stormy weather. Wait here. I will quickly go and get Carmen. Better hope that she's alive. Rowan didn't get to finish his words, as a small vortex of fire was flying towards them. Quick, get the ship on the move. I don't have a way to deflect a fire as huge as that. They hurriedly removed the anchor from the ground, and unable to wait any longer, Rowan used bounce on prominence to propel it forward, narrowly dodging the fire. Ha! What's that? Dan sweated profusely as he panted, intently watching the fire vortex that seemed to hover on the air. Suddenly, the fire vortex started to swirl, before forming a shape of a human. Carmen appeared out of nowhere. She was seen disheveled, with her spiky hair undone, and her face in a daze. What's this? Carmen shouted in confusion, before realizing that she was on the air. Ah! She began to fall towards the sea, but Rowan managed to catch her just before she fell in the water, by bouncing on the air. Landing back on a ship, Rowan stared at Sixus, where the whole island was burning, before looking back at Carmen. Karina, with shocked eyes, approached Carmen, who seemed to have calmed down. This has to be the work of devil fruit. Carmen looked around as she realized that she was back on the ship. Wow, what was that? I discovered a novel fruit while on my pursuit. After testing for any possible toxins and ensuring that it's free of bacteria or any other harmful factors, I took a slice and tried it for myself, only to taste the worst flavor I've ever tasted before finding everything around me on fire. Rowan went in the cabin and grabbed the devil fruit encyclopedia. Opening the book, he scanned through the pages at a quick pace. Devil fruit that grants an ability to manipulate fire? Isn't that just broken? Rowan thought as he stopped at a particular page. Is it this one? Rowan pointed at the fruit in the picture, which read, Flame fruit, Logia type. Carmen squinted her eyes towards the picture before nodding. Yes, it's this one. No wonder I didn't recognize. It was devil fruit after all. Carmen exclaimed as she stared at her hand, which turned into fire at her will. Ah, is this the fate? The fiery Carmen, to become the manifestation of fire itself. Watching Carmen make a dramatic pose with her eyes closed, everyone's sweat dropped. Well, I hope you learn to control it fast. We can't have you burn the ship like you did to that island, Rowan said while shifting his gaze towards Synopsis, which looked like an absolute hell. The whole island was on fire. But I really got to say, devil fruits sure are random. They keep on popping out of nowhere. I'm glad that you're safe, Carmen. With all crew members aboard, they decided to leave immediately as the humongous amount of smoke that was being produced started to make them feel uneasy. Whoever is to be shipwrecked on Synopsis from now on, I pity your soul. How will you survive even a day in a condition like that? Dan shook his head as Prominence began to sail through the storm. Of course, with Rowan's ability, it was a breeze. Although the harsh winds and waves kept on crashing against Prominence, the ship received no damage at all. So this is the ability of your infamous bounce fruit, Dan said as he saw Rowan placing his palm on the deck. Karina, sitting down on the rocking chair, heard the statement. Rowan manages to apply this fruit power in almost all the situations somehow. I don't even know if the limit for this fruit exists. While they were chattering, Prominence finally emerged from the chaotic sea and re-entered the usual calm sea of the East Blue. All right, everyone. Rowan clapped his hands together, earning the attentions from the others. We currently have over 25 million belly at least. When we reach the Loguetown, everything must be as quick as possible. I'll distribute 1 million belly to each of you. Karina, navigating tools, Carmen, cooking tools, and Dan, necessary medical equipments. Dan quirked his eyebrow at this. Medical? So don't tell me that you recruited me because of this. No, that's not it, Dan. Rowan shook his head, before explaining with his index finger pointing up. While we are on an adventure, what if someone becomes sick or injured? Our adventure will have to halt. Since you have the most medical knowledge among us, I'm leaving this task to you.
Ah, fine.
Although unconvinced, Dan nodded in an agreement. As for me, I will probably have to stay hidden on Prominence. At this point, my face is too well known, especially in the Loguetown, and only you guys, who aren't known yet, can afford to roam freely. One issue is the Jolly Roger on the sail. Although the Marines won't recognize this Jolly Roger, they will definitely check up. If things go bad, I will hold them off, but make sure not to take too long. Huh? Rowan abruptly stopped as he saw a small boat sailing in their direction. Following his suit, the other crew members attempted to follow where Rowan was looking, but sighted nothing.
What?
Karina asked in curiosity. A Marine? Rowan shook his head. No, a small boat. Whoever is on that thing is either blind or just dumb. All right. Who the heck approaches Synopsis on a small boat? The other crew mates didn't seem to buy his words. After all, who would do that? Yet, soon enough, they too saw the small boat near, which had the black-haired man, who was wearing a green vest with open midriff, a necklace consisting of red beads, and an orange hat with 2 blue smiling faces as decorations, snoring. Dude, wake up. Are you planning to die?
Dan shouted hurriedly.
Who the hell drifts to Synopsis due to sleeping in the middle of the ocean, within a puny boat? Hearing Dan's shout, the bubble on the man's nose popped. Stretching his body and yawning, the man rubbed his eyes before looking at Dan. Huh, where am I? The man said casually, without a hint of panic in his voice. Ha 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 ha. This is awesome. I think I teleported while sleeping. Wow, this man is insane. Rowan thought as he stepped next to Dan and leaned on the rail. Well, if you go any further, you might teleport into the afterlife. Is that so? Thanks. The man expressed his gratitude with a carefree expression. With a grin on his face, the man lifted up a paddle from his boat and easily changed the direction of his boat, coming side to side with prominence. So hey, where are you guys heading now? Rowan shrugged. Loguetown. He thought it would be all right to tell the man. After all, fooling someone at the current moment won't be possible, especially when the ship was already heading straight towards the Loguetown. Unless that someone has a brain made out of rubber. The man stared at the Jolly Roger on the sail of prominence intently. I see. So you're pirates too, eh? Well, nice to meet ya. I'm Ace, the future Pirate King. Want to join my crew? Ace said while stretching his hand out on the small boat. No thanks. Rowan's crew all answered synchronously, causing Ace to fall back comically. Loguetown, Captain Smoker. We report an emergency. The demon of the East Blue, Grimheart Rowan, has resurfaced. A big clash happened between the demon and the Wimpy fleet, which ended in the utter destruction of the latter. We lost a track of him after Sohelm Island, but recently sighted large smoke arising from Sixus. We suspect that the demon is heading towards Loguetown. I repeat, this is an emergency. Tighten the security and check all visitors thoroughly. Ensure that he doesn't escape to the Grand Line. The voice from Din Din Mushy boomed, within the room covered by the white walls. Smoker was sitting on a chair with 2 cigars on his mouth, as the veins popped out of his forehead after receiving such news. Roger. Hanging up the call, Smoker puffed out the smokes as he stood up from his seat. Grabbing his sea-stone-tipped jit and placing it on his back, Smoker exited his room. Station additional Marines near the harbor and have them check ins and outs of every parked or incoming ships. If anything considered as suspicious is found, report immediately. Double the number of patrolling guards and lookouts. Place the bounty of the demon around the town as much as possible. All these tasks are to be done at an utmost priority over anything else. Smoker ordered to the lieutenant standing next to him. Yes, sir. The lieutenant saluted stoically as Smoker passed by him and exited the Marine base. Bounce, bounce, fruit? No matter. My smoke will prevail. Smoker thought with a confidence as he strolled around the town, looking out for any suspicious movement. Chapter 33. As Rowan's crew approached to Loguetown, Rowan realized from far away that the security seemed to have tightened by a greater extent. As expected, it looks like they managed to figure out that we're heading this way due to the incident in Sixus. Rowan briefly thought before placing his hand up, signaling for a momentary halt of prominence. It seems that we may need to tweak our plans slightly. Rowan turned around to his members and explained. Judging by how ferociously the Marines are guarding the harbor, it is safe to assume that they know I'm on their way. Bringing prominence nearby may as well be impossible. We can't bypass this town, however, due to the necessary preparations we need. What then? Dan asked in curiosity. In response, Rowan shifted his gaze to Ace, who was lying down on the boat next to them. Huh. Ace tilted his head in confusion. Karina snickered as she saw Rowan starting another scheme. Rowan grinned as he rubbed his hands together. Hey Ace, do you know who's stationed in that Loguetown? The Captain Smoker. Although I've never faced him before, he is quite infamous as the White Hunter who never let a single pirate out of his town before. Do you know what that means? Ace sat up as his demeanor turned serious. Then I will be the first one that escaped from his grasp.
Dan sight in exasperation.
You can't be serious, right? That Smoker is known for his ability to control smoke. Now that I've seen the devil fruit abilities unfold in front of me, I can say with certainty that he must be one too. Therefore, let's make a deal. You help us, and we will let you ride on our ship until the next island in the Grand Line. How does that sound? Hearing Rowan's suggestion, Ace placed a hand on his chin, deep in a thought. White Hunter, devil fruit like Luffy's. Smoke? I can't punch him? That does sound quite troubling. Ace realized that the pirate crew in front of him was probably his best chance of entering the Grand Line. He didn't wish to be stuck in the East Blue any longer. All right, you got a deal. What do we do then? Great. So here's how it goes. Rowan began to lay out the plan as the group gathered around to listen. Captain Smoker, the lookout sighted one boat approaching our way, and we have identified Ace the rascal, wanted for 5 million belly. The voice within Din Din Mushy spoke as Smoker heard it intently. Immediately hanging up the call, Smoker instantly blasted his way to the harbor, using his smoke ability.
Yo, marines.
When Smoker arrived, Ace was seen standing on his little boat with hand waving at the Marines. This place looking quite nice, eh? First, we need just few minutes. Try to distract their attentions for few minutes, while I place Karina and Dan in the town by flying. Carmen, you should write down the necessary equipments for the other two to purchase them for you. Your job have to keep the ship safe in the middle of the ocean. Rowan's words resounded in Ace's mind as he faked a grin towards the Marines. Rascal, to think you would dare to show up alone at this time. How unfortunate, Smoker said as he let out a menacing grin of his own. Today is the end of your piracy. White blow. Smoker's fist stretched out as his arm turned into a smoke and shot out towards Ace. Come on, Rowan. I am already near my limit. Ace shouted in his mind as he narrowly dodged Smoker's punch, which simply changed its direction and started to chase Ace again. Ace stooped low to dodge Smoker's jit from slamming into him, before backstepping to evade the smoke that was about to surround him. Click. Many guns being loaded were heard simultaneously. The Marines surrounding Ace and Smoker were about to shoot, since the bullets deal no harm to Smoker at all. Shoot! Smoker shouted. Obeying his words, the Marines all shot their guns towards Ace. Boom, boom, boom. Just when the bullets were about to hit Ace, a black-haired individual appeared in front of Ace out of nowhere, before all the bullets were deflected back to the surroundings, causing injuries to many Marines around. You've done well, Ace. That was close, you know? Ace complained, but his eyes held an excited gleam. So you've finally shown up? Demon. Smoker's eyes widened as he finally came face to face with Rowan, whom he has been striving to arrest for months. That jit, sea stone, huh? Rowan's eyes narrowed as he sighted the sea stone at the tip of Smoker's jit. Ace, move on. Second, I will hold off Smoker and keep as many eyes away from you three as much as possible. There will be Marines chasing after Ace, so you will roam around the street and keep them occupied. When Karina and Dan are done, help Ace to get rid of those Marines together. Ace remembered Rowan's words as he nodded and began to run away from the site. You guys, chase the rascal. Don't let him escape. Leave the demon to me. Smoker quickly commanded to the Marines, who saluted and began to chase Ace to the town. Now, only Smoker and Rowan remained in the harbor. Heh, is this what you wanted, demon? Do you really believe that you, who lost against that idiot Mad Treasure, can defeat me by yourself? Smoker bickered, in order to make Rowan lose calm and act irrationally. Naturally, Rowan wasn't someone that could be provoked that easily. Sorry, what did you say? I think a duck was quacking nearby, Rowan said with a frown as he scratched his ear. From what I've identified from Carmen's ability, the so-called Logia type allows its uses to turn their body into the element itself. The ability to control smoke. There's two possibilities. Either smoke fruit, the Logia type, or fume fruit, the Paramecia type that allows the user to emit smoke from his or her body. Rowan's eyes narrowed as he readied his attack. Well, if you're not going to move first, I will. Rowan cocked his fist back, before punching forward in the air. Boom! With a huge noise, the air in front of Smoker was blasted by Rowan's punch, before crashing towards his body. However, Smoker was already prepared, as he quickly turned his body into a smoke and propelled upwards to dodge Rowan's attack. Logia type. Rowan grimaced as his eyes stayed onto Smoker in caution. White out. A large amount of smokes were emitted from Smoker's body before approaching towards Rowan at a rapid pace. Sensing danger, Rowan immediately bounced off the ground with huge amount of force, causing it to crack in shock. At a rapid pace, Rowan soon arrived at an air higher than Smoker. Placing yourself up high in the air when facing against smoke. Aren't you a bit too airheaded, demon? Smoker barked as the huge amount of smoke swirled towards Rowan in the air, who simply grinned. Hoo! Rowan took a deep breath as the air around him suddenly sucked into him, creating a vortex-like scene. After filling his lungs with air to the extreme, Rowan immediately expelled the air as hard as possible. Boom! What happened next was terrifying to everyone in the city. The terrifying wind and the overwhelming amount of smoke collided, trying to force their ways through. It felt as if the whole city shook, as the wild wind and smoke flew everywhere, causing the whole city to become chaotic. Eventually, the chaos subsided as the struggle ended in a draw, with both sides out of their respective firepower. TCH, I thought you were the user of Bounce Bounce Fruit? Where did this wind come from? Smoker gritted his teeth in anger. Seeing his max output didn't manage to affect Rowan. Imagination, Smoker. No one understands my ability better than I do. Rowan grinned as he pulled his hand back while still up in the air. Watch out, because it's going to be different this time. Rowan began to fall down from the sky towards Smoker. Smoker summoned a large amount of smokes around him again, attempting to envelope Rowan into a grip as he fell. White world. Bounce crash. 10 hit. Rowan stated as his palm outstretched with his descent. In a next moment, Smoker's smokes were completely flattened and Smoker, although he was in a smoke form, was pinned on the ground, with the highly concentrated pressure waves squeezing his smokes. 10 consecutive noises were heard in succession as the cracks formed under Smoker's smoke-clad body and enlarged as each strike landed. Guh! Smoker was shocked. He was damaged in his smoke form. His ability allowed him to turn into smoke, which is gas in terms of state of matter, but Rowan, who was able to fly in the sky through the use of bounce, was able to land strikes onto the gas itself. Cough, cough, coughing out blood. Smoker managed to stand up and wiped blood off his chin. I gotta say, Smoker, I expected more from you, Rowan said with a grin as he safely landed on the ground using series of bounce force under his feet. But so far, I haven't seen anything apart from you just expelling the smokes from your body. A disappointment, really? You? Smoker seethed in anger as he heard Rowan's ridicule. His eyes reddened in fury and his fists clenched hard. While saying such words, Rowan's gaze was actually behind Smoker, where Karina, Carmen and Ace were giving him thumbs up while hiding behind the wall. Our last step. All right, Rowan thought as he lifted his right hand up, which was clenched into a fist. Boom, 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 he generated huge noise at a certain rhythm, using his bounce force. Right after, boom, a bright fire was shot up in the sky at a distance, before exploding in the midair. Witnessing such a scene, Smoker's eyes widened. Marines, prevent them from escaping dash. He turned around to give out an order, but met no one to respond him. Everyone were unconscious on the ground. All according to the plan, Rowan muttered as he slowly approached to Smoker, who tensed up and got into the stance, taking out his jit. Smoker, you just made a crucial mistake. You just entered my range, Rowan stated as delivered his final words to Smoker. Bounce. Rush. Rowan began to punch at insane speed towards Smoker. The air exploded in front of Smoker at a blinding pace. It was so fast that Rowan's punches broke through the sound barrier and utterly destroyed Smoker, even though he was turned into the smoke.
Ora, 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 ora.
Boom with a final strike. Smoker crashed into the building and laid unconscious, as he bled severely from many spots. All right, guys, seems that everything is good to go, Rowan said with a thumbs up as he saw the others coming out of their hiding spot. They sighted prominence approaching to the harbor. Oh, how the tables have turned, Rowan thought as he reminisced over the time where he used to be held in custody here. It seems that he has achieved his revenge by running a rampage. 34.5 Q&A. How did Rowan hit Smoker? 1. Rowan previously learnt how to bounce on the air like Jeppo. How? His ability, as previously explained, allows him to generate a vector from himself and the solid objects he touches spontaneously, which bypasses the Newton's third law of motion. The generated vector's direction is always set, perpendicular to the surface where it is generated from. This vector is what I call bounce. Why can we walk on the solid ground, but not on the air? Because air is a gas molecule in terms of the state of matter, it has much more entropy than solid, and due to its wild movements, each molecule is unable to maintain a shape and produce a regular structure. What Rowan essentially did is to ignore that by a large margin. The bounce generated from his feet were so great in terms of magnitude and quickened speed that it allowed Rowan to propel while on the air by bouncing off of each gas molecule. Again, this is unrealistic and doesn't make sense, but it's One Piece world. Point is, if he can do this to fly, he can do the same to attack. This is first shown when Rowan visits Syrup Village. He creates a dent on the cliff without touching it. His bounce force excites the air molecules so much, and this energy gets passed on from molecule to molecule through collision. Although the force is lost as it continues to travel, Rowan's bounce force was enough to generate an incredible amount of damage. So how does his bounce generate an incredible amount of force in the first place? If you recall, his muscles became so dense that his body weight far surpassed that of a normal person. Imagine him trying to carry such weight on the air. Yeah, you need lots of force to keep him afloat. Rowan was already used to expelling large amount of force since he learned to bounce off of the air. Understood 2. Now this is the main point. How did Rowan hit Smoker? Now we know that Rowan's vector, bounce, can excite and affect the gas molecules. Wait a minute, doesn't Smoker's smoke fruit allow him to turn into smoke, which is a gas? Yes, of course. The important point is that he turns into gas. Rowan can excite the gas molecules, but use bounce forces at incredible strength. In other words, Rowan already learned how to hit Smoker prior to facing him. Additionally, Smoker's smoke is denser than the air. Hitting Smoker is easier than bouncing off of the air. And hence, Smoker, who relied heavily on his fruit, was utterly defeated by Rowan. Understood. If that's the case, isn't Rowan technically invincible? He'd be able to hit everything. Just reading this, you might think that bounce fruit is overpowered. But hey, there are a couple of key points that you gotta keep in mind. First, it has been mentioned that the bounce force Rowan can generate depends on his physical strength. Rowan's physical prowess, as stated in Auxiliary, already reached at the level of Rear Admiral, which means, if someone like Garp comes and punches Rowan, he's done for. Second, dense gases like smoke and poison gas, Caesar, Rowan can hit without hockey, however, not pure energies or subatomic particles such as fire, light, lightning, darkness, gravity, etc. Bounce fruit is purely physical. Third, the vector, bounce, generated from Rowan is always unidirectional. If his attack through bounce is a large scale, it isn't because he's able to produce something big like that, but it's more like 8 balls, where you use one white ball vector to hit all balls, molecules, simultaneously. Last, as for the natural counter for bounce fruit, there are mainly 2 of them, tremor fruit and hollow fruit. Tremor fruit, the vibration created from the fruit completely nullifies the vector generated by bounce. If vector travels an x-axis, the vibration from this fruit not only weakens the magnitude, but applies force in all kinds of directions, that the vector itself loses its original intention. Hollow fruit, immune to all physical attacks. Enough said. My head hurts writing this. Of course, most of this is BS, but I hope I clarified some confusions here. Chapter 34. Grabbing all the items they purchased, Rowan's crew got aboard Prominence. Of course, Smoker's sea stone jit ended up in Rowan's hand, who quite liked the round edge of the weapon, which allowed him the versatile use of bounce. Perfect. What a magnificent execution of plan. Carmen greeted them on the ship while making a dramatic pose. Now let's see what you got for me. Cooking board, not bad. Frying pan, acceptable I guess. As Carmen was busy inspecting the equipments Dan bought for her, the crew immediately adjusted the ship and left Loguetown Harbor, with no Marines chasing after them. Hee, guess what? Look what I got. Karina laughed as she slightly lifted the hem of her shirt, and to everyone's surprise, many wallets fell out at once. More importantly, all of them looked very puffy and luxurious. Rowan smiled and shook his head in helplessness. In the future, Prominence might sink just because of the sheer amount of wealth we've managed to accumulate thanks to you. After counting the remains of bellies that Rowan handed out, and coupled with money Karina acquired through thefts and the remaining 22 million bellies, They now had 27 million bellies in their hands. As they continued to sail, the sea began to lose the stillness, as the currents began to swirl madly and the waves began to crash wildly. Prominence swayed from side to side, and some members had to grab onto the rails to keep their balance intact. The weather around them darkened and became stormy, as rains began to pour all of a sudden. Here we are, the reverse mountain, the road to my luxurious life, Karina exclaimed as she pointed towards the fast stream of water in front of them, which flows towards the top of the mountain in a gravity-defying fashion. The pathway was quite narrow. One mistake will cause them to sink in the sea. However, they had Rowan, the user of Bounce Fruit. What was there to worry about? Wow, what a strange feeling, Rowan said, full of emotion, as he reminisced over his past 18 years of life in the East Blue. Although he decided upon the choice of entering the Grand Line due to the endless pursuit of Marines, he could not help but feel proud. He felt as if he's completed the tutorial of a game and is about to enter the real game. To think I, the fiery Carmen, would enter the Grand Line, witness my endeavor, world, the greatest venture of the greatest cook in the history. Carmen held out her arms wide and generated fire to further exaggerate her already exaggerated manner. But the rains immediately caused her fires to be extinguished, which left her embarrassed. An adventure that I want. Dan grinned as he too stared at the reverse mountain in front of them. Now this is something worth living for. Ace was leaning against the rail with his hat lowered, covering his eyes. The Pirate King? The strongest man in the world? Ha, watch, you old man. I'll surpass you even before you realize. Just keep rolling in your grave. His eyes were resolute as they looked back at the Loguetown, where his father, Lord de Roger, was executed. Rowan, seeing that Prominence was nearing the reverse mountain, cracked his knuckles before crouching down and touching the deck of the ship. All right, here it goes. Everyone, get ready. Yes, Captain. Karina, Carmen, and Dan shouted in joy. Carmen and Dan went down the anchor room, where there lied a wheel with a rope tied on it, which is connected to the sail. Karina strapped log pose on her wrist and was situated at the front of the ship. Ace, on the other hand, remained on his seat. He was a guest after all. Rowan began to generate countless bounce forces on the sides of the ship. Unlike when they sailed through Sixus, there was one more thing to worry about: safely entering the narrow entrance of the reverse mountain. It required precise control, as the waves caused Prominence to shake and interrupt Rowan's maneuver. Turn to the right, Karina shouted from above, while reading the flow of wind and water. Right? Got it. Dan answered and pulled on the wheel, together with Carmen. As Prominence neared the reverse mountain, it began to gain speed at a rapid pace, before blasting off of its spot as the ship entered the fast current of the reverse mountain. Rowan, here it comes. Karina shouted as Prominence neared the narrow entrance of the reverse mountain. Rowan gritted his teeth as he stared ahead. Here it goes. Bounce shield. With all of his strength, Rowan generated the bounce force all around Prominence's outer body that touches water. Boom! The water, air, and rock all alike were repelled from Prominence momentarily, and at the same time. The ship bounced off of the left edge of the entrance, before perfectly situating itself in the middle of the path. Few glad that it worked. Rowan wiped his sweat and relaxed, as Karina gave him a V sign with her hand. Haha, impressive. Ace laughed at the back, which earned a tick mark from Rowan. Will you shut up? Rowan and Karina barked simultaneously. Carmen and Dan climbed back up with sweats of their own, as they held an excited gaze. We entered the reverse mountain. Prominence rapidly approached the top of the mountain through the straight current. The current kept reaching higher and higher, and the surroundings revealed majestic views of the vast sky and ocean. The current that reached the top dispersed into the air and sprayed in beautiful rainbow color. Rowan looked at such incredible sight in awe as he lost his words. So this is the Grand Line? I can't help but wonder, what will I be experiencing from now on? A floating island? A giant so big that one stomp will create an earthquake? A sea on fire? Rowan's mind ran through many unimaginable ideas as Prominence sped through the top. In the next moment, Prominence passed the top of the current and momentarily flew into the sky. The sun shined upon the ship brightly, radiating a glow that encapsulated the ship in magnificence. 13 years of obliviousness, 4 years of vengeance, 1 year of naivety. Now, Rowan's story was about to move on to the next page, where the true adventure begins. This scene was unfold in front of the white orb-like entity, who simply grinned at such a scene. It seems that he already changed much more than I have anticipated. Is it for good, or is it for bad? Cocoyasi village suffered a much worse fate. However, the entire East Blue has become a much more safe place than the original. The story called One Piece, led by the protagonist named Monkey D. Luffy, no longer exists. How will it unfold from now on? Show me, Rowan. How will you change and morph this world? The entity said in excitement as his gaze shifted to the book he was holding, which read, One Piece, Volume 1. I don't need this anymore, do I? The entity threw away the book, which disintegrated. The only thing that remained was a speck of dust, which floated away into the air. Chapter 35. Quack, quack. News-Ku cried as it landed on the table that is laid outside. The scenery depicted a peaceful view of a small house surrounded by forest and a Mekong grove, which seemed to have been tended with care. Come on, 100 belly is a bit too much, don't you think? How about a 20% discount? Don't I, as the loyal customer of World Economy newspaper, deserve this much? Nami was seen to be negotiating with News-Ku, who crossed its arms and turned its head around as a sign of refusal. Nojiko's sweat dropped at the scene, before taking out 100 belly from her wallet. Here, take it. News-Ku happily quacked before hurriedly flying away, wishing no more from Nami. All right, let's see what's new this time. Grabbing the newspaper in boredom, Nami brought the newspaper close to her eyes. The destruction of Loguetown and the defeat of the East Blue's White Hunter. 3 days ago, Captain Smoker, who has never let any pirate out of Loguetown, with the exception of Mad Treasure who managed to escape when he wasn't present, suffered a grievous defeat under. What? Nami abruptly stood up from her chair, with the newspaper in her hands shaking. Her expression was that of an absolute shock, as she once again saw the face she is very familiar with. What? Watching Nami's outburst, Nojiko couldn't help but ask in curiosity. Taking a gulp, Nami continued reading. The East Blue's highest bounty holder, previously known as the Demon of the East Blue, Grimheart Rowan, also known as Uchiha Bob. Nojiko's heart jumped in a surprise hearing that. They had known that Rowan is a strong individual. He defeated Arlong after all, and they knew how terrifying Arlong was, unlike others who's never seen him. However, defeating the White Hunter was a different story. The formidable Marine from the Grand Line, who's known for his incredible strength that caused the crime rate to notably drop ever since his arrival. Prior to his arrival in Loguetown, the Marines identified that a big clash occurred between the demon and his previous subordinates, the Angel Pirates. To our shock, the latter suffered a bloody massacre by the former, with rarely any survivors remaining. As Nami kept on reading, she became increasingly nervous. Although Rowan has been a notorious pirate in the East Blue for quite some time by now, he has rarely been described in such a way due to the heroic behaviors he used to act upon. Now, it seemed that his ways changed around by 180 degrees, befitting of the name Demon. A day ago, the Marines identified that the East Blue's worst criminal has sailed into the Grand Line. Additionally, it is suspected that he has 4 subordinates under his command, with one of them being Ace the Rascal, with the previous bounty amounting to 5 million belly. As such, the Marines decided to raise the bounties of these 2 criminals, with some modifications. Nami flipped the newspaper to the next page, and there lied 2 bounty posters. One showed a freckled man wearing an orange hat, smiling widely. It read, Portuguese D. Ace the Rascal. Wanted dead or alive, 10 million belly. What shocked her, however, was the other poster. It depicted a man with black-colored eyes, staring ferociously with his ruffled black hair. It read, Rowan the Grimheart. Wanted dead or alive. 65 million belly. How can this be? Nojiko, who came next to Nami a moment ago, widened her eyes in shock as she looked at Rowan's new bounty. 65 million? That's more than double the bounty he used to have previously. Nami seemed exhausted just from reading, as she placed the newspaper down on the table and slouched. He'll be okay, right? Bob. I never thought it will go like this. To think he actually dared to enter the Grand Line, known as the Pirates' Graveyard. Nojiko and Nami knew Rowan for 17 years. He was never a bold individual. He was a cautious individual who was against taking risks in most of the cases, with a hint of obliviousness. They knew that he wished for nothing but a peaceful life. Can't you see? Nami sighed. Bob decided to use Rowan as his name. He threw away his old carefree self known as Uchiha Bob. Although Rowan insisted on using the name Rowan, simply because he recognized the name Uchiha Bob as hideous, Nami interpreted otherwise. The silence ensued the Mekong Groove, as the duo ceased to speak and stared at the poster. Do you think it's worth it? To sail with a dream, just like how you want to draw the map of the whole world. If even Bob, who was the most disdainful of such idea, has ended up sailing like this, how about me? Nojiko seemed to be in a deep thought. Nami stayed silent at this. Ever since Arlong was gone, she felt conflicted about her dream. On one hand, she wanted to set out and begin to explore the world. However, at the same time, she wished to just let go and rest peacefully. Now that Nojiko has spoken up, she, for some reason, felt as if her heart was set on fire. Say, Nami, why don't we try ourselves? Just like Rowan, set out to the sea and create a story of our own. Just imagine, the beauty pirates, beautiful and strong at the same time. Nojiko declared as her fists clenched. Nami laughed at this, although she was leaning towards yes. Haha, Nojiko, your name sense is absolutely horrible. Beauty pirates, what is that even? Marineford in the office, two huge men, who had the coat with justice written on the back draped over their shoulders, were seen to be chattering. One man, Sengoku, had a black-colored afro hair with round glasses, while the other, Garp, had a short white hair and goofy visage. Bwahahaha, that smoker kid got flattened. Garp laughed as he munched onto his rice crackers. He recognized Smoker, who used to be Zephyr's student. With a frown, Sengoku shook his head. He sighed as he placed his hand on his forehead. Just who is this Grimheart? Where did he come from? His strength isn't that noteworthy in Grand Line standards, but he somehow managed to change the East Blue single-handedly before racking havoc in the East Blue's most secured town. This isn't trivial matter, Garp. He caused the Marines' control over the East Blue to weaken by quite an extent. Rowan defeated Arlong and Don Krieg, and the latter was responsible for causing people to rely on the Marines for their safety. It was for this exact reason that he was left uncaught, to strengthen the Marines' influence over the East Blue. However, Rowan destroyed the system in an instant by wiping the East Blue clean, with most of the noteworthy pirates caught. Now, with exception of the pirates who are good at hiding themselves, such as Buggy the Clown, there was no particular threat in the East Blue. People no longer had the same reliance they used to have on the Marines. Bwahahaha. The Marines failed to protect the hometown of the Pirate King. Bwahaha, that's the funniest thing I've heard. Garp rolled on the ground full of laughter, completely ignoring Sengoku. Shut up, Garp. Sengoku barked at Garp, before placing the East Blue Edition news down. Eventually, Garp sat back up on his seat, with a thoughtful expression. Ace, did you really join this man? Garp couldn't help but think in curiosity, as he stared at Rowan's bounty poster. What's so special about him, for the bearer of D to willingly serve under? A rookie with such a potential, this boy must be viewed with a caution. Sengoku muttered as he took one last glance at the bounty poster, before focusing his mind back on much more important matters. Uchiha, it seems. The Rear Admiral Batten muttered to himself as he grabbed an old-looking, dusty book from his bookshelf. So that's why it sounded so familiar. It used to be my favorite story after all, along with Liar Noland. The book on Batten's hands read, The Tale of Uchiha Medusa. Chapter 36. The current from Reverse Mountain was quite intense as it flowed downstream into the ocean of the Grand Line. Prominence was seen sailing on top of such a rough current, descending from the mountain at a very rapid pace. The whole crew were very excited. However, It did not take long for the excitement to turn into a shock. Out of nowhere, a huge black wall appeared at the end of the reverse mountain, blocking their way through. Ace and Dan's jaws dropped and their eyes popped out comically as the ship continued to accelerate towards the black wall. Ah, what is that thing? Karina shrieked out of shock as she held onto the rail tightly. Carmen dropped her fan as her terrified gaze was locked onto the giant obstruction. Ashu! Rowan was dumbfounded as he stared at such a strange phenomenon. Quickly grasping his consciousness, Rowan quickly slouched down with hand on top of the deck. Quick! Go change the direction before we crash into that thing. Ace and Dan hurriedly ran into the anchor room and turned the wheel with all their might. Soon, Karina and Carmen joined too, and used all their strengths to rotate Prominence. Boom boom, the water underneath Prominence exploded as Rowan used Bounce aid his crew members and Ace's efforts. Couple of seconds before the ship reaches the wall, Prominence managed to rotate approximately 90 degrees and was sailing down the current with its side facing the wall. Rowan began to use the bounce force on the side facing the wall in an attempt to slow down the speed Prominence. Thankfully, Prominence managed to slow down and avoided crashing into the wall. Boing! Subsequently, the side of Prominence came in contact with the wall, and to everyone's surprise, the ship bounced off of the wall. Meaty? Carmen squinted her eyes, trying to identify the potential ingredient. Suddenly, part of the black wall opened, revealing a humongous eye. Everyone was frightened at such sight. Immediately following, the creature revealed a huge mouth with sharp teeth, opening them wide while facing the sky. A giant whale? Rowan shouted in a disbelief as the creature revealed itself in a full glory. In the next moment, the whale began to let out a cry, which was so loud that everyone on the deck couldn't help but cover their ears. The sound waves traveled all around, generating violent waves and causing Prominence to shake. Eventually, the whale's screech subsided. Rowan's mind was disheveled, but he couldn't afford to wait any longer. They had to get out of this place fast, before the whale would dare to try something again. Rowan used the bounce force to safely propel them away from it. After sufficient distance has been gained, everyone released a sigh. So this is Grand Line. Right from the start, a giant whale. Gotta write down this one too, Dan said in a relieved tone, before taking out his journal. Taking a seat on the nearest chair, Rowan let out a relieved sigh. The Grand Line has given a strong impression right from the beginning, to him and his crew. I gotta get used to stuffs like this. This is just the beginning. There's probably much more bizarre and absurd phenomena than this. Getting his brain back into work, Rowan gathered everyone's attention. Karina, where do we go now? Rowan asked in seriousness. The navigation in Grand Line was to be dealt without a regard for a common sense. It was especially complex and difficult in comparison to the Four Seas. Taking a deep breath, Karina spoke up. This is where everything begins. According to what I know, we get to choose to record one of the 7 magnetic waves given off by the red line on this log post. Each magnetic wave represents one route, so there are 7 routes we can choose in total. In the end, all those routes will converge into one island, Sabaody Archipelago. Listening to Karina's words, Ace tilted his head. So in the end, it's completely random. We don't have any information of what islands each route leads to. Is that so? Rowan grinned hearing that. There are 7 possible routes with all of them unknown. If so, the choice is easy to make. Then, we will head off to the 7th route counting from the top. Lucky 7? Sounds good to me. Dan gave a thumbs up to Rowan. Oh, Lucky 7, bring us the luck in our journey. Carmen shouted up into the sky as she opened her fan and flapped it in the midair. Aye, Captain. Now that we've chose our route, listen everyone. This is where the real sailing begins, so stay tight and don't miss a single word I say. Karina stated and earned nods from the crew members. Soon, the ship began to turn and headed off, away from the red line. Woohoo, the first sail in the Grand Line. Ace shouted joyously as he looked around the sea enthusiastically. Finally arriving at the destination, the crew quickly anchored the ship and tied the rope around the pole in the harbor in order to secure Prominence's position. Ugh, are you guys all right? Rowan asked weakly as he looked back. where all the crew members and Ace were lying down in exhaustion. Their first sail was truly a mess. The current and flow of sea was weird. They were going straight, but in the next moment, they somehow ended up going in a completely opposite direction. The weather was disastrous too. At one moment, it was all sunny and relaxing. Then, before they even realized, the thunderstorm appeared out of nowhere, creating a chaos everywhere. Thankfully, they managed to reach their first island in the Grand Line, thanks to Karina quickly adapting to such a weird weather. The island in front of them, which was quite big in size, was very unique in terms of characteristic. The overall shape was very smooth, with just one round surface as a ground over a large radius. There were many short palm trees planted left and right, filling various sections of island. From far away, the island looked like a head of a person suffering a hair loss. In the middle, there were houses and other buildings situated, which showed that a town was situated within the island. Yuwa, how am I still alive? Karina's eyes were comically spinning as she lied down on the deck. Grand Line definitely deserves the name Pirate's Graveyard. All right. Carmen seemed very tired, with the dark circles formed around her eyes, and her hair was disheveled, losing the particular spikiness she spent hours for. On the other hand, Dan abruptly bounced up from his spot, with his eyes shining in pure joy. What an adventure! Yes, this is the true life a man should be living for. Excitedly shouting, Dan once again pulled out the journal and began to jot down the details. Laughing at his crew's antics, Rowan turned and observed the island that laid in front of them. Although with sunny weather, the island seemed lax and carefree. However, Rowan knew that it won't be that simple, as he saw quite a number of other pirate ships parked at the other corners of the island. Some were big and some were small, but that wasn't the point. Naturally, Rowan wasn't able to identify any of them, and therefore, he wasn't sure as to how strong they would be. The pirates are lawless beings. Especially with two beautiful women on his ship, Rowan believed that a fight was inevitable. Turning at his recovering crew, Rowan voiced out, "You guys shouldn't let your guards down. I've spotted quite a number of pirate ships around this island. They probably got here days ago, since we spotted no other pirates apart from us in the Red Line. And now, Ace." Rowan shifted his gaze to Ace, who seemed to be in a thought. "I would have asked if he wants to join my crew, but it's 100% guaranteed that he will refuse. After all, he wishes to become a pirate king. It's about the deal, isn't it?" Ace sighed in a slight sadness. "Yeah, we've kept our promise of getting you a lift to Grand Line. Unless you are to join my crew, I cannot let you stay aboard any longer," Rowan said resolutely. There was no negotiation. Although Aces has been a pleasant company to keep around, a stranger is a stranger nonetheless. Rowan thought as he kept his decision firm. Slouching down at Rowan's rejection, Ace nodded. "I figured that you'd say that. Everyone, thank you for the ride. I hope to see you again in the future." Grabbing his sack and hanging it over his shoulder, Ace gave a salute to everyone and jumped off the ship. "Aw man, I liked him." Dan scratched his head as he saw Ace walking away. "He's pretty easy to get along with, after all." "Well, a promise is a promise, you know. Stay any longer, and that will basically be cheating off of us." Karina nodded with her eyes closed, seemingly agreeing with Rowan's decision. "Besides, we don't know anything about him, apart from the fact that his full name is Portuguese de Ace, the only thing he told us." Rowan, with his arms crossed, gazed as Ace disappeared into the town. "You may have no idea, but it was a pain in the ass to keep my caution around him." Growl suddenly, a loud growling sound occurred at Rowan's stomach, causing Rowan to look down at his own belly. "I feel bad for Ace, though. He's going to be missing the foods from the best cook, right, Carmen?" Carmen, who finally recovered, stood up with a dramatic pose. What a miserable fate indeed. However, he'd no mind, for he is a formidable young man himself. "Now, wait and I shall deliver you the meals from the heaven." Watching Carmen's reaction, Rowan couldn't help but think, what would have happened if Carmen and that dude, Sir Martinos, met? Chapter 37. A day has passed since Rowan's crew arrived at the island, for they decided to stay on the ship and refill their energy first, since they were exhausted from the sail. Currently, they are situated on the deck, with Rowan distributing the wealth to the crew mates. Our primary focuses are to restock the food supplies and to gather more information regarding the Grand Line. Other than that, we can try to explore this island and see what it has to offer, Rowan stated with a smile as he watched the enthusiastic antics of his crew mates. Karina's eyes turned into belly, remembering that Rowan mentioned of sighting other pirate ships in the previous day. Carmen seemed excited to see the food ingredients that the Grand Line offers. Dan simply wanted to enjoy the exploration. Without waiting any further, Rowan and his crew jumped off prominence and advanced to the town. They had to walk through the palm tree forest for quite some duration, since their ship was parked quite far away from the town. Eventually, the town was revealed in front of their view as they finally exited the forest, which seemed to be in a complete chaos. Up ahead, the lawless pirates were walking, running, or shouting without any care, without any restriction. Some were seen holding a mug of beer on their hands and getting themselves drunk without a care. Few were blatantly waving their weapons at the others, causing said others to respond back with hostility by taking out their respective weapons. Some corpses were lying dead on the sides, which were casually ignored by the other pirates. What is this? Dan said in disbelief, as his expectation completely shattered. What laid in front of them was a dystopia. He turned to the right and saw the broken board that read, Bremen Town, safe haven for the pirates. Rowan, Karina, and Carmen remained stoic. Rowan has already killed over 1,000 men from Rowley's crew previously, and such scene no longer bothered them anymore. You should get used to this, Dan. The Grand Line is constantly being bombarded with new waves of pirates from the four seas. This was bound to happen. Rowan patted Dan's shoulder and got him out of trance. Clank, clank, even right now, there was an ongoing fight between two pirates who were fuming against each other. Not wishing to spend any longer out here, Rowan's crew quickly reached the building nearby, Grand's Deli and Bar. Creak opening the door to the building, Rowan's crew entered the deli. Immediately, the pirates inside the deli turned their attentions to Rowan's crew, as if assessing how dangerous they are. Heh, newbies? One pirate muttered as his eyes dangerously gleamed, which were staring at Karina and Carmen. Another pirate on the next grinned as he stood up and cracked his neck, as his hand reached for the sword strapped on his back. New praise to hunt. The pirate with a sword approached Rowan's crew. However, not paying any attention, Carmen immediately bolted out and started to inspect the ingredients, leaving the other pirates dumbfounded. Oh, smoked ham? Very unique. The seasoning seems to be different than the typical, and I don't recognize the aroma. New ingredient from the Grand Line? Carmen shouted excitedly as she roamed all around the place without any care. Slam! The angered pirate slammed his sword on the ground. Listen to me, y'all noobs. If you don't want to die before he could finish, he was instantly blasted off of his spot and crashed into the wall. His sword too was broken into pieces. Rowan was holding one of his fists out with an annoyance engraved on his face. The eyes of the other pirate widened as they processed what just happened. Anyone else? Rowan said half-heartedly as he placed his hand back into his pocket. Karina ran to the pirate who crashed into the wall before digging into his possessions. Before long, Karina stood up with a disappointment and disdain. How come you are so poor? There's nothing to take. Behind them, Dan was seen to have walked up to the counter and ordered a mug of beer for himself. First beer in the Grand Line. Dan clenched his fists in an excitement. Although the domineering characteristics of Rowan's crew was shown, the other pirates didn't seem to be that intimidated. After all, they are the pirates who managed to sail through the Red Line, or the ones that sailed backwards from the other islands. Another small pirate crew was seen to have sat down in the corner of the place. A muscular man with spiky and bright red hair, red-orange eyes, red-purple-colored lips, and square-shaped goggles on his forehead, who seemed to be the captain of the crew, was holding a particular paper in his hand. He slowly stood up to the full glory of his height, reaching to approximately 205 centimeters, with a grin on his face. Rowan the Grimheart, a notorious pirate who has been given a bounty as large as 65 million belly in the East Blue, which is known as the weakest sea. The man's grin widened as he saw an individual matching to the bounty poster he's holding. The other pirates who were watching the interaction became shocked. 65 million? Who is that man? Why would the Marines ever issue a bounty that high outside of the Grand Line? One pirate cried out in disbelief as he began to sweat out of nervousness. Some pirates quietened down and became wary of the situation, looking around with a caution. Few revealed greedy eyes as they gazed at Rowan. Ha 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 ha. To think you've chose the route same as me, what a fortune. The red-haired man laughed boisterously as he ripped the bounty poster in half before throwing it away. What did I say, killer? I said lucky seventh path, didn't I? Another blonde-haired man, whose face was covered in a unique mask, shook his head. Only you would consider this as lucky, kid. Stomping on the ripped bounty poster, the red-haired man, now revealed as Kid, exclaimed with excited eyes, Grimheart, what a perfect way to begin my path of becoming the Pirate King. The others stared at Kid with "Are you stupid" looks. Pirate King? Ha ha, what a foolish dream. Ha ha ha. All the pirates laughed out loud, having lost their composure from the phrase of Kid. Watching such a scene, the eyes of Kid pirates were set in a blaze as they started to unsheath or grab their weapons. Kid's face darkened and the veins popped from his forehead in pure rage. Nobody laughs at my dream. The furious Kid stretched out his right arm as if grabbing onto the air, with purple-colored electricity cracking around it. Simultaneously, the whole deli store began to shook. The other three members of the red-haired man's crew stood up as well and joined their captain, preparing for the battle. Witnessing the sudden development, Karina, Carmen, and Dan quickly returned to Rowan and stood by. Kid? Who's this man? Rowan thought as he steadied himself for an upcoming battle. I'll kill you all. Kid roared as all the surrounding metals, including the bars, swords, guns, bullets, utensils, frames, and more, all flew towards Kid and swirled around him like a metal storm. The pirates, fearing the sudden aggressiveness, began to flee out of the deli store in urgency. Repel. In the next moment, Kid snarled with his eyes locked on to the pirates who insulted him. The metals that were rotating around Kid all shot towards the hordes of pirates, before stabbing and slicing through. The place quickly turned into a bloody mess as numerous corpses fell on the floor and the structures broke down. Watching the lethal objects flying towards them, Rowan pulled his arm back and slammed his fist forward. Boom with a large sound. All the metal objects were blasted back in the midair and lost their momentum. Clank clank as the objects fell down on the ground. Rowan's crew and Kid's crew were standing in a deadlock, while glaring at each other. Another devil fruit user? What happened to it being rare? Dan said in exasperation. Contrary to what he has experienced for the past 22 years of his life, Dan met 4 devil fruit users in less than 2 weeks. Metals? An ability to manipulate it, along with the electricity. Most probably about magnetism. Rowan said as his eyes were firm on Kid, watching in caution. Karina sighed before taking her daggers out. I think I know where this is going. Carmen placed the bags of food ingredients down on the side. She had no other choice. TCH, a devil fruit ability to bounce off the objects. Quite annoying to deal with. Kid frowned and cliched his tongue as he saw Rowan easily neutralizing his attack. Killer, heat, wire, split up. I take the Grimheart. Seems that he's locked onto me. Since his offenses mainly come from the metals, Carmen's flame fruit will be the perfect counter. Assuming that he controls magnetic force, melting the metals will cause them to lose the magnetic properties. However, I'm not too sure if that's the only card he got on the sleeve. Quickly thinking, Rowan made decision. Guys, it'll probably be the best for us to split up as well. I'll handle the captain alone. You 3 handle the other enemies. Expecting such answer from Rowan, the members nodded. Rowan knew that his members are capable by themselves as well. Karina possessed an incredible dagger-wielding skills and quick reflex that always allowed her to gain an upper hand in a quarrel. Carmen ate the most devil fruit he has seen so far. Dan proved himself as quite formidable back in 6s through their spar, with his intelligence. Rowan believed that they would win even without his help. Blasting off his spot, Rowan quickly dashed towards Kid, who grinned and held out his hand as it cracked in purple electricity. Taking this as a cue, The crew members of both Rowan and Kid's crew dashed and clashed against one another. Karina's daggers clashing against Killer's scythe-like blades. Carmen's fire melting one of Heat's sword as it went through her body, which transformed into the fire. Dan jumping back to dodge a stab from Wire's trident. Boom! Rowan's fist met the metal shield formed by Kid's ability before blasting it backwards, revealing Kid's maniacal gleam behind. Heh! Prepare to become my stepping stone, Grimheart. Chapter 38. The blood-seeking war began between two pirate crews in ruins where many metal objects were lying everywhere. Clang the trident, held by Wire, struck the metal wall behind as Dan managed to dodge it by a narrow margin. That weapon, it's not affected by their captain's magnetic force, Dan thought as he saw his opponent wielding the weapon with ease. Its hardness and sharpness feel stronger than the average steel alloy used for a typical weapon. A good strategy. Their enemies will be disarmed while they get to keep theirs. Wire charged at Dan again, while spinning the trident atop of his head. Clang clang, quickly grabbing the metal pole that was lying down near him. Dan blocked the rapid strikes from Wire. Keep thinking, but that won't lead you anywhere, coward. Wire mocked in disdain as his trident didn't cease to stop striking. Down, spin, and then swipe from the left. Wire's wild and unkempt attacks were troubling Dan at the current moment. At the same time, Kid, who was facing Rowan, operated his ability to a great extent, causing Dan's metal pole to slip off from his grip. The trident was about to stab through Dan, until Wire had to dodge the daggers that flew towards him at a blinding speed. With a shocked face, Wire turned his head and sighted Karina's hand outreached to Wire, while fending off against Killer by grabbing other metal objects from the ground. Phew, nice one, Karina. You used magnetic force from their captain to enhance the velocity of the dagger. Dan silently thanked Karina before widening the gap. Doesn't change anything. Wire regained his composure and stated impassively, with his grip on the trident tightened. Don't expect your crew mate to help you again. Nearby, Heat was struggling against Carmen, a Logia-type fruit that grants complete control on fire. Heat grimaced as he gazed at his disfigured sword. In front of him was Carmen, who was completely unscathed. Standing full of confidence, Carmen opened her signature fan and made a dramatic pose. Witness the brilliance of fiery Carmen. No one shall stand before the Queen of Fire. Carmen shouted her monologue before flapping her fan towards Heat in a wide motion, from left to right. Arc of flamboyance, Carmen announced as a huge arc of fire was emitted out of her fan flap and began to travel towards Heat. Hua! Heat inhaled the air as much as possible, filling his lung full of air. Right afterward, he exhaled a huge stream of fire from his mouth to match Carmen's attack. Boom! Two fire streams collided with one another and exploded in midair, before the hot wind blasted towards Heat, causing a few burns on his skin. Ugh. Shielding the heat by crossing his arms in front of his face, Heat felt conflicted. Not only is his strongest attack, which is breathing fire, have no effect on the enemy, but Carmen's casual use of her ability was already overwhelming for him to deal with. Quickly thinking, Heat began to retreat towards the water tank that used to be a part of Grand's Deli and Bar, as he realized that water may be the only way to counter Carmen's power. However, Carmen didn't sit idly. She reached the same conclusion as Heat and instantly propelled herself towards the water by changing her form into the fire. She was notably faster than Heat, who was running, but due to her lack of control, she failed to change back to her normal body and ended up crashing into the water tank. Boom! The water tank collided with Carmen's fire and evaporated with a boom, causing the steam to cover the entire area. Heh, nice one, Carmen. Karina smirked as the steam enveloped her and Killer, who she was struggling to fight against with Kid's constant use of magnetic force. Immediately sneaking through the battlefield, she snatched the sword from Heat, who received the full blow of steam right in front of his face and received another set of burns. TCH, a fire devil fruit user? Seems like we are at disadvantage. Killer assessed the situation calmly and tensed his stance. Although he was very agile and possessed strength that far surpasses Karina, he did not have senses as enhanced as her to roam freely when his vision was obstructed. Clang, clang, clang from the steam. Killer immediately blocked the slashes that came from his left shoulder, right leg, and top of his head consecutively, before backflipping away from his original position. Boom amidst the steam. The sound of Rowan's bounce force boomed loudly before the metal objects started to fly in every direction. Karina and Killer parried or dodged. Carmen simply stood as they went through her body. Dan, Heat, and Wire ducked to avoid getting hit. Eventually, the mist cleared, and Wire managed to dodge just in time before Karina's strike landed on him. Swapping opponents, Heat dashed to close the distance between him and Dan, while Killer jumped with his scythe-like blades heading towards Carmen, who was recovering from the crash. Exactly what I was waiting for. Dan smiled confidently with a metal frame in his hand while dashing towards Heat as fast as possible. I've seen this dude's attack while his fight with Carmen. He breathes fire. If I time correctly, I can use this to my advantage. Heat knew that Dan didn't possess any special ability and that he was the weakest link of Rowan's crew. Inhaling air, Heat blasted the fire towards Dan, who dodged by sliding himself under the fire. Heat lowered his head to change the target to Dan while jumping back, but Dan already predicted this and leaped himself sideways to dodge the stream of fire. Running out of breath, the fire from Heat's mouth ceased and Heat raised his hand to prepare for Dan's strike, who held the metal frame back, ready to strike. However, right before the metal frame landed, Dan let go of it, and while Heat blocked the metal frame thrown at him, Dan revealed a small metal screw in his hand before slamming it into Heat's chest. Heat! Wire cried as he saw the scene, but he didn't have time to help Heat, as he too was slashed by Karina multiple times, causing him to stumble back from the pain. Gritting his teeth in pain, Wire spun the trident all around his body, attempting to parry Karina's strikes. However, she was nimble and agile, to an extent where she somehow slipped through Wire's defense before wounding him further. Boom Killer was seen to be flown up in the air and crashed into the metal wall with scorch mark on his abdomen, as Carmen managed to evaporate all water on her body just before Killer's strike landed, then turned herself into the fire, causing Killer's slashes to go through her, before blasting a fire towards his exposed stomach. Keck, spitting out blood, Killer wobbly stood back up. Heat, Wire, stand up, is that all you got? With Killer's shout, Heat and Wire stood back up as well. What do you mean? We are just getting started. Heat bumped his fists together as he stood on the left of Killer. Wire too stood up with his trident, supporting his weight on Killer's right. Time for round 2. Killer's demeanor changed as he threw away one of his melted scythe-like blades before crouching down. Boom boom boom. Rowan and Kid were seen to be on constant move, with Rowan advancing towards Kid with his punches backed by bounce, while Kid was defending each strike with metal clusters he created in a small amount of time, while continuously retreating away from the other groups. Our plan isn't working as intended, Kid thought while facing off against Rowan. My presence isn't helping Killer, Heat, and Wire. I've almost injured them myself. Besides, I cannot defeat Grimheart without exerting my full strength, which means I got to get away from them. Every time they collided, metal objects were seen to be flying everywhere, and the buildings nearby were being disintegrated due to Kid's ability. Attract. Kid held out his hand that was encased with purple electricity, and numerous amount of metal objects that were flying away abruptly stopped in midair before shooting towards Rowan and Kid at a rapid pace. Boom. Rowan used bounce all around his body to repel the objects, but they kept on regaining their speed towards him, which left no choice for him but to jump up to dodge them. The metal objects soon joined together to form a large fist on Kid's left arm, who held the metal-clad arm up towards Rowan, who was in the midair. Repel. The giant cluster of metal shot towards Rowan at a rapid pace, who bounced in the midair and backflipped to dodge Kid's attack just in time. Subsequently, Rowan propelled himself towards Kid by bouncing on the air once more, while cocking his right arm back, with his palm open. At Kid's command, the metals once again flew towards him and formed a thick, metal shield on his left arm. Bounce crash, 10 hit. Rowan's palm came in contact with Kid's metal-clad arm. 10 loud booming sounds were rapidly heard consecutively, and Kid's confident grin turned into a shock. Boom boom boom. 6 strikes formed a noticeable crack in Kid's metal shield, before the 7th strike completely broke it apart. Boom, 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 the last 3 strikes landed on his left arm, which was left defenseless, completely shattering the bones and causing it to bleed severely.
Ugh.
Kid clenched his teeth and immediately jumped back, with his right arm covering his severely injured left arm. However, his eyes continued to burn in fighting spirit. Landing on his feet, Rowan quickly checked Kid's state before propelling himself once again. This time, Kid too jumped towards Rowan, with his fight fist stretched out towards Rowan. Punk! The metals all around them began to attach themselves on Kid's right arm at a blinding pace. In less than half a second, Kid's arm became impossibly huge, and Rowan saw a giant arm blasting towards him with a blinding speed.
Bounce.
Rowan stopped himself from propelling by skidding on the floor and prepared himself just before the giant metal arm reached him. Gibson! /rush. Both simultaneously shouted as one giant metal arm and blindingly fast punches collided. Rowan's insanely fast punches, reinforced by the strongest bounce forces he could muster, faced against Kid's giant metal punch that crashed onto him with domineering strength. The shockwaves produced from Rowan's constant bounce forces blasted off, destroying everything around the surrounding. Rowan was skidding on the ground due to the enormous force from Kid, but didn't stop his punches. Eventually, Kid lost his momentum and landed on the ground. Repel! Kid's giant arm immediately blasted off right in front of Rowan before he could dodge. Crossing his arm in front of himself, Rowan generated bounce all around his body to parry all the metal objects propelled towards him. Huff huff! Landing on his feet, Rowan was seen to be sweating profusely as his face showed visible fatigue. Kid too seemed exhausted and in pain, with his severely damaged left arm still not taken care of. Well, shall we continue? Catching his breath, Rowan let out a grin, which was reflected by another one from Kid. Naturally, Kid replied as the metal objects began to gather around his right arm again, with the surrounding completely devoid of any other life except for the two. Don't die too quick, Grimheart. Chapter 39. Ha ha ha. Hearing Kid's remark, Rowan couldn't help but laugh. Don't die too quick? It just sounded so absurd to Rowan. Initially, Rowan intentionally held himself back and feigned carelessness to make it seem as if he was struggling against Kid's attack. Although Kid's Punk Gibson technique surprised him off and forced him to use all his strength momentarily, Kid will never gain an upper ground ever again. All of this was for the purpose of letting Kid reveal the full extent of his strength so that Rowan can judge whether he will be able to defeat Kid or not. What was his conclusion? Kid is weak in relative to Rowan. From the fight, Rowan assessed Kid's strength to be in similar level to Smoker, although the latter will probably win against the former due to the fruit advantage. Watching Rowan's sudden shift in attitude, Kid frowned. What's so funny? Kid growled in annoyance, but Rowan responded with a goofy grin, invoking further anger from the former. I'd just like to say that if that's all you got, forget about me being your stepping stone. Pirate King? Seems a dream more achievable for me than you, Rowan said while cracking his neck and stretching his arms. Veins popped on his forehead as the metals on Kid's right arm continuously became larger in terms of size. What did you say, you bastard? Say that again. Not even bothering to speak any longer, Rowan crouched down, getting ready for another propulsion. Boom! With a sound of bounce, Rowan disappeared from Kid's field of view, causing the latter to be shocked. What? Where is he? Kid began to look around cautiously and quickly maneuvered the metals on his right arm to form a dome-like shape around him. Boom, boom, boom! The sound of bounce has begun to be heard all around Kid. The interval between each sound became shorter and shorter, and soon, the sound was so quick that it resembled the noise from a drill. He's accelerating. Kid sneered as he continued to thicken the dome-like shield. However, no matter how fast you are, you cannot break my shield with bare hands. Sonic! While the booming sounds were being heard all over the place chaotically, a faint voice was heard. Boom! All of a sudden, Kid's dome was instantly broken, and the metal objects were damaged beyond belief, to an extent where they were disintegrated into dusts. Kid's eyes widened and his mouth vomited blood, as he saw Rowan's fist deep in his abdomen. Before he could even realize, Kid began to fly backwards in an incredible speed, crashing through 4 buildings in succession before the 5th building collapsed onto him. Boom! Rowan's attack far surpassed the speed of sound, and the incredibly loud noise only managed to catch up as Kid flew. What, is he a human? The pirates, who were watching the fight from a far distance, couldn't help but tremble in fear. They could feel the ripple all the way from where the collision occurred. Cough, cough, cough. So, Huff never used his full strength? Kid weakly muttered to himself as his surroundings were covered by the dust and the heavy objects that crushed him. Rowan didn't believe that his strike would have ended Kid's life. He could feel how durable Kid's body was as he punched. Lowering himself, Rowan picked up his gun that fell out of his holster due to Kid's ability, before aiming towards Kid. Kid, using his magnetic force, managed to lift up the objects from his body. As the dust cleared, what lied at far distance away from him was Rowan, holding a gun towards him. Outrageous. Cough, you dare to use metal against me? Although severely injured all over, Kid roared towards Rowan for what he believed to be a stupidity. Rowan didn't seem to mind Kid's outburst. The whole of his gun continued to stare at the fallen Kid. Let's see which is stronger, my bounce or your magnetism. Without further elaboration, Rowan shot the bullet towards fallen Kid, and the said bullet traveled towards Kid at a blinding speed with booming sound. While severely bleeding, Kid held out his right arm and mustered all his strength. As he clenched his right arm, clad in purple electricity, the bullet notably slowed down as it approached Kid. With the bounce continuously propelling the bullet forward, the struggle of power began as Kid's magnetic force collided against Rowan's bounce force. Seems like one isn't enough, eh? Rowan said casually. Let's see if you can handle 2 at the same time.
Bang!
Another bullet was shot from the gun, and with booming sound, the second bullet too traveled towards Kid. Fuck. Kid cursed inwardly as he saw the second one incoming. Clang! The bullet completely rammed into the first bullet that was in the midair, reinforcing the bounce force behind the first bullet. WRHHHH, Kid screamed as he squeezed out strength from his entirety. The mashed bullets shook as they slowly approached Kid. Pretty capable. How about a third one then? Rowan said with a cold gleam in his eyes, before shooting the third bullet. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If you dare to attempt to kill me, prepare to die yourself. Bang! Kid watched with a despair on his face as the third bullet approached him at a very rapid pace. And no, I, Eustace Kid, am meant to become the pirate king of the world. I cannot fall here. His eyes blazing up full of will, he lifted up his deformed left arm and focused all his strength as the third bullet mashed into the first 2 bullets. Clang! As soon as the third bullet reached the first 2, the deadlock was broken immediately and the bullets shot towards Kid's forehead at a very rapid pace. No. I won't die here. Never. Kid screamed with all his might as the bullet rapidly approached him, about to pierce through his brain. Bang! A faint sound of the 4th bullet being shot was heard from Rowan. Ah! That was all Kid could say before the 4th bullet crushed into the cluster of the first 3 bullets. Clang! The loud noise of the bullets colliding resounded, and the bullet cluster shot towards Kid at a blinding speed, before smashing into Kid's skull without any resistance. Kid slouched as the blood was oozing out of his forehead, lying dead. Rowan impassively stood a far distance away from Kid and blew on the smoke that was emitted from the hole of his revolver. Tucking in the revolver back into his holster, Rowan turned away from Kid and propelled himself away from the scene. Clang, clang, clang! With Kid gone from their sight, Rowan's crew no longer had to worry about the magnetic forces disarming them. Having regained her daggers, Karina was moving at an incredible flexibility as she rapidly slashed her daggers toward Killer, who blocked all the strikes with his scythe-like blade on his right hand and a dagger on his left hand. Suddenly, Killer ducked, revealing Heat, who was about to blast fire off from his mouth. Karina quickly bent over and narrowly dodged the stream of fire that passed right over her. Meanwhile, Carmen rushed towards Heat in her fire form, but was blocked by Wire, who crashed a huge rock in front of her. If Carmen were to be crashed under the rock, even in fire form, The lack of oxygen will extinguish the fire and cause her to return to her normal form. Carmen had no choice but to halt. At the same time, Dan was behind Heat with a trident that originally belonged to Wire in his hands, ready to stab. Right before it reached Heat, however, Killer quickly took notice of Dan, propelled himself backward and parried Dan's attack. Taking such opportunity as a chance, Karina dashed from her position towards Killer. Heat attempted to block her with the metal pole in his hand, but Karina nimbly moved and bypassed Heat while slashing him numerous times. Dodging Carmen's stream of fire, Wire charged to Karina with a metal sword. Heat, although bleeding, regained his composure and attempted to slam the metal pole to Karina at the same time. Karina swiftly backstepped and dashed behind Killer, who was about to slash through Dan. Boom! Suddenly, a loud, earth-shaking noise was heard from afar, causing everyone's eyes to widen. Heh! Karina grinned knowingly as she blocked Killer's blow. Seems like your captain is in trouble. Killer, Heat, and Wire became uneasy as they didn't recognize the noise as an attack of his captain. The noise from Kid's attacks never sounded that concentrated, due to many metal pieces clattering against one another. Killer, Kid might be in trouble, Heat said with wariness. Killer too agreed, however. It didn't seem that escaping from Rowan's crew was possible at the current moment. They were at clear disadvantage. Wire. While engaging Karina's rapid slashes, Killer silently muttered to Wire, who nodded in response. We can't hesitate any longer. Carmen. Karina shouted as she grabbed Dan and jumped backwards. Watching that Karina and Dan gain some distances from the kids' pirates, Karina held her palms forward. Brilliant Phoenix. A large phoenix made out of fire was emitted from Carmen's palms and flew towards the kid pirates. The kid pirates grimaced as the phoenix approached them rapidly. Boom! The phoenix exploded on where the kid pirates stood by, before the smoke covered the vision of the Rowan pirates from locating the kid pirates. Bang! Suddenly, a sound of gun was heard unexpectedly. Carmen's eyes were open in shock as she looked at her left arm, where a white bullet was stuck within. Before she could register, she lost all strength and fell on the ground. A sea stone? How? Karina and Dan were surprised beyond belief. To think the kid pirates were hiding such hidden card. As the smoke cleared, Killer, Heat, and Wire were seen, with Heat standing in front, quite badly burnt. Behind Heat, Killer was standing with his mask burnt away, and Wire was holding a smoking pistol in his hand. Phew! Finally, the most dangerous one is down. Killer sighed as he spun the scythe-like blade in his hand. It took so long to have that woman lower her guard, and the fact that we only had one sea stone bullet, forget it. Heat, are you okay? Wire said worriedly as Heat fell down on the ground, unconscious. Killer looked at Heat and nodded in an acknowledgement. Stay there and rest, Heat. We will finish the rest. With Carmen and Heat down, the rest of the members stared against one another, ready to finish the fight once and for all. Chapter 40. Watching Killer and Wire standing side to side, Dan tensed up, readying himself for the continuation of the battle. However, Karina seemed unfazed in contrast. That's what I should say, really. Karina smiled mysteriously, which induced wariness from Killer and Wire. The most troublesome one is down. I can finally go all out without any worry. Karina reached for the pouch strapped on both of her legs and revealed 4 small daggers on each of her hands, and each dagger was held in between her fingers. Killer and Wire, who have never seen her use such weapons before, became increasingly nervous. I see, Dan inwardly thought as he saw thin metal wires between each dagger and Karina's finger. Using that in front of fire-breathing Dude and Carmen would be suicidal, since the fire would heat up the string and melt her hands. Boom! Suddenly, a booming noise was heard nearby, before Rowan appeared right next to injured Carmen. Sea stone, huh? Hang in there, Carmen. Inspecting Carmen, who was weakly lying down on the ground, Rowan inspected her and realized that she has been wounded with a material that he's quite familiar with. Karina, how much longer? 3 minutes. Don't interrupt in my fight, Rowan, Karina said before dashing towards Killer and Wire at a rapid speed. Dan stood in his spot, not sure what to do. Guess I will be the doctor then. He moved over to help Carmen. Wire, staring at the scene, looked grim. Grimheart is here, and he doesn't seem that injured. Which means, Killer seemed to be worse. His whole body was shaking in an inexplicable emotion as he experienced sorrow and fury at the same time. Kid, you're still alive, right? You got to be. You better be. You bastard. Tilting his head to sideways, Wire dodged one of the dagger thrown by Karina. However, the dagger bent its trajectory path in the middle and turned behind Wire. A metal string? Killer and Wire thought as they saw a faint line connected between Karina's hand and the dagger. Killer quickly deflected the dagger before it struck Wire. Right at that moment, Karina reached right in front of Killer and Wire prior to throwing all 7 daggers at once. As if, using his swift speed, Killer quickly swung his scythe-like blade to deflect rest of the daggers. However, Karina swiped her hands in wide motion while jumping backwards, causing the abrupt shift in the movement of the daggers. Ultimately, Killer's blade failed to hit any. Immediately afterwards, Karina took hold of 2 larger daggers in her hands, where the metal strings are still intact. Now, Karina is controlling 10 daggers at once. Wire, who was circling around to reach Karina from the back, stopped his approach as he saw Karina crouching on her spot, with 8 small daggers in midair behind her back. Shit, here it comes. Killer thought as he grabbed onto his scythe-like blade and a random metal sword and raised his guard. Wire simultaneously jumped back next to Killer, getting ready to defend Karina's attacks. 10 times 10. Storm of 100 blades. With a sudden burst of speed, Karina abruptly appeared right in front of Killer and Wire, with their weapons crossed together to clash against the larger daggers on Karina's hands. At the same time, the small daggers attached onto the metal string were seen to be circling behind the two, causing their eyes to widen in realization. Checkmate. At the next moment, all that was seen were the incredibly fast daggers slashing towards Killer and Wire at a speed so fast that Rowan, Carmen, and Dan could only identify the bloods spilling out of Killer and Wire like a flood, and Karina was nowhere to be seen within the chaos. It was as if they were placed in a grinding machine. Kid. Killer thought as all he saw was a red color all around, before his vision darkened out with a horrifying sound. Thud thud, 2 individuals fell on the ground, with gashes all around their bodies. Simultaneously, Karina appeared out of thin air, holding 10 daggers dripping with the blood. Phew, finally. That fight was quite annoying, you know? Karina took out a handkerchief from her pouch and wiped the blood off her face. Thankfully, the fire dude was down, or else it would have took longer. Carmen and Dan seemed to be amazed by Karina's mastery over daggers as they watched her casually walking back towards them. Meanwhile, Rowan pointed his finger towards unconscious Heat. How about that guy? Is he still alive? In response, Karina threw one of her dagger towards Heat, which flew very swiftly and penetrated his skull. Everyone in Rowan's crew understood that Kid's crew must be annihilated. They could not risk any chance for a revenge. There is no place for compassion within the Grand Line. Dan's face seemed grim, staring at the corpses, killed by his very own crew mates. Karina sighed looking at Dan. Wake up, Dan. It was either them or us. If we don't kill them, they will return soon or later to kill us. This I can guarantee you. Just think about how the fight broke out in the first place. Not even paying attention to the conversation or the deep wound on her left arm, Carmen seemed to be gloomy over the spilled contents from the bags she was holding prior to the battle. What a waste. Now I shall have to purchase another portion. Such fine ingredients, gone to waste. Dan sat down on his spot out of fatigue, as the effect of adrenaline in his body slowly wore off. Karina seemed to have returned to her main occupation. Thief. She was busy searching through the dead bodies of Killer, Heat, and Wire, but to her dismay, found nothing worth. Rowan too was exhausted, but they had one more job to do. Well, now it's your favorite part, Karina. Let's see what Kid Pirates got to offer. They were efficient pirates after all. After searching for some time, they managed to find a ship with unique features, such as the dinosaur-resembling head with sharp claws attached in the front. The large Jolly Roger was painted on their frontmost mast, in which anyone could recognize as Eustace Kidd. Wow. It seems that they managed to rack up quite a fortune. Karina roamed around excitedly with her hands full of valuables. Most of them were weapons, but Karina knew from the sight that they can be sold at good prices. Rowan was initially a little reluctant, as his mind kept telling him that this isn't a right thing to do. However, he then realized that he was being a hypocrite, for he has already killed over 1,000 in terms of number. He was a bad boy, not a good one. This gun doesn't look too bad. Therefore, Rowan let go of such worries and began to plunder without a control. After all, these items no longer had an owner. Carmen was interested in taking some cooking equipments, but saw that they were very poor and inefficient. She quickly lost interest in any further exploration. Dan seemed to be focusing on exploring the layouts and structures of the ship itself, in order to quench his curiosity regarding the unique characteristics of the ship. So they placed the rows made out of metal. Their captain has the ability to control magnetic force after all. I wonder how they made them so light. Make the inside hollow? Dan was muttering to himself as he peeked from here to there. Hey Rowan, why don't we take the whole ship? Karina said with her eyes sparkling, earning a sweat drop from Rowan. Rowan already has thought of this, and shook his head in a disagreement. Perhaps we could have, if we were to have more members than this. I doubt 4 people are enough to sail with 2 large ships at once. Karina pulled her hairs in frustration. If only we had a shipwright. We could have ripped off all the useful pieces and modified our prominence. Rowan chuckled at Karina's antics, before taking out a new revolver he found from his holster. It seemed to be custom designed, by whom he doesn't know. However, unlike the typical revolver he was originally carrying, this one could be loaded with 20 bullets at once. It was quite bulky in terms of its appearance due to this big load size. At the same time, there were 2 barrels in the front, which meant that 2 bullets can be shot at the same time. Rowan was giddy to try out his new toy. My control of devil fruit power has already improved quite a bit since the last time I've used revolver. I remember only being able to manipulate only 1 bullet at that time, but just before, I controlled 4 at once. Am I actually a genius? Inwardly praising himself, Rowan gathered his crew and returned to their ship, Prominence. Chapter 41. Who are you? Rowan looked around him and found nothing but darkness. Rowan kept looking around to identify the enigmatic voice that seemed to boom everywhere around him, but to no avail. Who are you to judge me? Rowan retorted back angrily. And why do I care as to how you think of me? My life is mine alone, so fuck off. Right after Rowan's outburst, he suddenly found himself sitting up on his bed while sweating. A nightmare? He muttered to himself. He was in his room within Prominence. The day before, Rowan's crew restocked the necessary supplies and left immediately. They also managed to gather some information regarding the next island that the log pose is pointing at by asking other pirates nicely. In the end, it turned out that their next destination, called Mundy Island, is an island with the size similar to the one Bremen town was situated within. The log pose requires approximately a day to fully record the island and lock onto the next island. Problem is, the whole Mundy Island functions as the marine base, which is the reason why many pirates were stuck in the Bremen town. It seems that the Marines decided to trap the pirates within the island and prevent any further progression in the Grand Line. Calming his mind, Rowan stood up and exited his room, which was located under the deck, along with the rooms for the other crew mates. Walking up the stairs, Rowan saw his whole crew mates awake. Hey Captain, you're awake? Dan greeted Rowan by raising his hand up. His other hand was on the dumbbells that Rowan purchased long time ago in the East Blue. Rowan smiled as he saw that scene. Hee, feels good, doesn't it? Dan's sweat dropped at Rowan's sudden change in attitude. He thought that his captain was quite normal in terms of mentality, but every time he works out, Rowan would turn into a training pervert. Well, I saw you doing like 90,000 curls in one go. Like how? Carmen peeked out of the kitchen window. Breakfast shall be served shortly, so keep yourselves ready. A mouth-watering aroma was emitted from the kitchen, instantly earning everyone's attention. Karina, who was sitting on the rocking chair with her sunglasses, was seen to have teleported to the dining table in less than a millisecond, with a napkin tied around her neck and her hands clenching onto a fork and knife. Already used to her antics, Rowan and Dan shook their heads before taking a seat for themselves. Soon after, Carmen stepped out of the kitchen, while holding 4 plates at the same time, 2 on each of her hand, and the other 2 on each forearm. And the breakfast is served. Carmen placed the plates down and made a dramatic pose, which is now ignored by the members. Sulking, she sat down for her own meal. Rowan clapped his hands together. We give thanks to all the ingredients in the world, before wolfing down the food like a wild animal. Karina was seen to be cutting the meat with an elegance, with her eyes closed and her chin lifted up high, which is the way she imagines how the life of bourgeois must be. There seemed to be a golden aura generated around her as she ate. Hot, hot, hot. Oh wait, I am the fire, Carmen said to herself as she placed part of the food inside of her mouth, which earned a deadpan from everyone. Am I the only one normal here? Dan cried inwardly as he watched the weird things that his crew mates are keep pulling off. However, right after making such a thought, Dan suddenly exclaimed as he ate a portion of the food, "Ooh, the novel taste I've never tasted before. What an adventure!" Whether if it was the Grand Line or just them being the usual, Rowan's crew has surfed away from the usual averageness long time ago. So what's the plan now? Karina asked to Rowan after they finished the meal. Are you going to pull those bullet tricks again? Rowan shrugged. I can, but we got to think about 2 aspects for that. First, massacring the Marines would lead to a huge raise in my bounty. Say hi to the Marines and bounty hunters chasing after us over and over. Second, this is Grand Line, and there probably will be higher ranking officers in the base that occupies the whole island. I'm not sure if the same trick will work again. After the reply, Rowan turned to Dan. Hey Dan, you are probably the smartest out of all of us here. Do you have any idea? Dan gave Rowan a smirk as his index pushed up the black eye mask he has been wearing, even though it wasn't necessarily falling off. So it's my time to shine. The key here is to stay in the island undetected by the Marines until the log pose completes its recording and locks onto the next island. An area where the Marines are everywhere? What's there to worry if you become a Marine yourself? Carmen can create a distraction by creating some steams with her fire and the water from the ocean. Captain will quickly fly with Karina and infiltrate the Marine base. How? Simply beat up 2 Marines and steal their uniforms. Easy. No need to worry about being detected, since we only need 1 day. Using the steam, Carmen and I will hide prominence in far distance. You will be able to sight us, Captain. The explanation seemed bland, but Rowan could see the plan working. Heh, even better. Why don't we just steal one of the log poses they got? Karina made a suggestion of her own, which earned a nod from Rowan. What if the Marines sight the ship, though? They surely will patrol the surroundings after witnessing a large steam coming out of nowhere. Haha, if I were them, I'd be more cautious of any infiltrations and sudden attacks. If anything, they will prioritize the defense. It's you 2 who have to watch out rather than us. Dan immediately voiced his thoughts. How much longer until we reach Monday? Rowan turned to Karina after deciding to act upon Dan's plan. Around 4 hours or so. Karina replied with a confidence. In the end, direct clash must be avoided, since we know nothing about their strengths. At the same time, the log pose must fully record the island, or we need to acquire a new one. As soon as our ship approaches, they will begin their assaults. Seems that Dan's plan truly is the only option we got. Weighing pros and cons, Rowan came to believe that Dan's idea is the best chance they got. All right. Even the day seems a bit too long, though. Karina and I will focus on stealing the log pose from their base. If there is any trouble on either side, we will communicate through the same noise pattern we used back in the Loguetown. With all that said, prepare yourselves. Bumping his fists together, Rowan concluded the conversation. 4 hours left until prominence reached Monday. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 3. Peace.